What if the future of humanity lies in our hands, shaped by the technology we create and the choices we make today? As we stand on the precipice of unprecedented change, the question remains, will we rise to the challenges of tomorrow or risk losing our place in the ever-evolving story of civilization? The story of humanity's birth begins long before cities, writing, or even agriculture. It stretches back to the earliest days of human existence, when our ancestors lived as nomadic hunter-gatherers. These early humans, members of a species known as Homo sapiens, roamed vast landscapes, relying on their wits and physical abilities to survive. Their lives were deeply intertwined with the natural world, and their survival depended on their capacity to adapt to a range of environments. The transition from this early, immobile lifestyle to the establishment of settled communities marked a profound shift in human history. Anthropologists and archaeologists have uncovered fascinating evidence about this transformation. Excavations of ancient tools, remains of hearths, and even burial sites have revealed a picture of humans slowly becoming more attuned to their surroundings. Early humans crafted simple tools from stone, bone, and wood, allowing them to hunt, gather, and even defend themselves. These tools were far more sophisticated than those used by their animal counterparts and suggest a burgeoning intelligence and capacity for planning. They also left behind traces of social structures and communal living that would form the foundation for more complex societies in the future. The most significant shift occurred with the development of agriculture. As the climate warmed at the end of the last ice age, wild plants began to flourish in certain regions, providing a new and more reliable food source. Over time, humans learned to cultivate these plants and domesticate animals, leading to the birth of farming. This allowed communities to settle in one place, creating the first villages. Early farmers cleared land, built structures, and organized their work in ways that required cooperation, marking the first steps toward organized society. This transition wasn't instantaneous, and it didn't happen everywhere at once. Some human groups continued to live as hunter-gatherers for thousands of years, while others embraced agriculture and formed villages. Yet, in those early agricultural settlements, the seeds of civilization were sown. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of the first permanent homes, early pottery, and the beginnings of trade networks. These communities began to develop social hierarchies, as certain individuals or families took on leadership roles or controlled access to key resources like land and water. The shift from a nomadic lifestyle to one rooted in settled agriculture also sparked the growth of technology and intellectual pursuits. Early humans began to experiment with more complex tools, build larger structures, and develop new methods of food storage and preparation. They began to create artwork and symbols, hinting at the emergence of culture and religion. The very fabric of early societies was being woven, and what began as small, practical changes in human life would eventually lead to the rise of the first great civilizations. This period of transformation would set the stage for the birth of cities, writing, and the powerful empires that would come to define human history. In the earliest chapters of human history, survival was closely tied to the tools our ancestors crafted. These early tools were not just extensions of their hands, they were the very means by which humans adapted to and conquered their environment. The first tools, simple and rudimentary, marked the beginning of a new era in human evolution. Crafted from stone, bone, and wood, these implements allowed early humans to hunt, gather, build, and protect themselves in ways that other species could not. The earliest of these tools were simple stone flakes, sharpened by striking them against other rocks. These tools, known as Oldowan tools, are among the first evidence of human ingenuity. Early humans, particularly those of the genus Homo habilis, used these sharp-edged stones to butcher meat, scrape hides, and chop wood. The precision required to shape these tools was a testament to the developing cognitive abilities of early humans. It showed that, unlike animals, they could plan and think ahead. These tools were not made instinctively, but with purpose, an essential trait that set humans apart from their closest relatives. As time progressed, the tools became more sophisticated. Homo erectus, an ancestor of modern humans, advanced the art of tool-making, crafting hand axes and cleavers that were more effective for a variety of tasks. These tools, created through a technique known as bifacial flaking, were carefully shaped on both sides to create a sharp edge. This improvement not only made these tools more efficient for cutting and processing food, but also demonstrated an emerging understanding of how to manipulate the environment. The development of such tools required fine motor skills and the ability to envision a tool's potential, reflecting a leap in human cognitive capacity. The significance of these early tools went far beyond just survival. They represented the first steps towards specialization and technological progress. For instance, the design of spears and other weapons gave early humans a way to hunt large animals, challenging their reliance on scavenging and shaping the future of their diet and society. These tools made it possible to hunt more efficiently and defend against predators, contributing to the growth of early communities. The impact of these tools on human evolution cannot be overstated. They allowed early humans to thrive in diverse environments, from the savannas of Africa to the cold, harsh climates of Europe. As tool use expanded, it influenced physical development. Our ancestors' hands grew stronger and more dexterous, and their brains began to grow larger to accommodate the cognitive demands of tool-making and problem-solving. The use of tools, then, was a defining moment in the human story. These early implements were the building blocks for all future technological advancements. What began with a simple stone flake laid the foundation for the complex technologies that would one day define human civilization. As early humans honed their craft, they unknowingly charted a path that would lead to the creation of everything, from agriculture to cities to the machines that would transform the world in the millennia to come. Fire was the first great transformative force in human history, a discovery that would change the course of evolution. The mastery of fire marked the dawn of a new age, one that saw early humans rise to the challenges of their environment in ways that no other species could. Before they learned to control fire, humans were at the mercy of nature, their survival dependent on the natural rhythms of day and night, on the availability of food and the protection offered by the landscape. But with the mastery of fire, humans gained a tool that could shape the world around them, literally and metaphorically. At first, fire was something early humans could only harness through accident, lightning strikes or wildfires sparked by natural causes. But gradually, they learned to create it deliberately, striking stones together or rubbing sticks to kindle a flame. This control over fire allowed humans to cook food, a practice that revolutionized their diet. Cooking not only made food more digestible, but it also unlocked new nutritional value. It made previously inedible foods like tough meats and starchy tubers both palatable and safer to eat. Cooking also freed early humans from the constraints of a raw diet, which required constant foraging. With fire, they could preserve food for longer periods, helping them survive through lean seasons. This shift was not just about sustenance, it laid the groundwork for the social and cultural developments that would follow. The control of fire also had a profound effect on social structures. Gathering around a fire, early humans found a central place for communication, cooperation, and social bonding. The fire became the hearth, the beating heart of the community. Families and tribes would sit around it, sharing stories, exchanging knowledge, and building relationships. This created an environment conducive to the development of language. The act of speaking and listening around the warmth of a fire became a ritual, one that fostered communication and the transmission of culture. It was here, at the hearth, that early humans would have begun to develop not only their words, but also their understanding of themselves and the world around them. Fire also provided protection against the cold, against predators, and against the darkness of night. A fire could keep wild animals at bay, allowing early humans to sleep more soundly, knowing they were safe from nocturnal dangers. It also extended the day, turning night into a time for socialization and creativity. With fire, humans could stay awake, working on tools, telling stories, and engaging in the kind of intellectual and creative pursuits that would form the foundation of culture. In many ways, fire was the spark, not just of warmth and light, but of civilization itself. It altered the trajectory of human life, pushing people to think, to communicate, and to collaborate in new ways. The mastery of fire made possible the next great leap forward, giving early humans the ability to reshape their environment and adapt to an ever-changing world. It was a gift that, once discovered, could never be undone, setting the stage for the rise of technology, culture, and society. As early humans gained control over their environment, the need for cooperation became increasingly vital. No longer were they just solitary hunters and gatherers, struggling alone against nature. The rise of social structures marked a pivotal shift in how humans interacted with one another and the world around them. Early social groups formed organically, initially rooted in familial ties. These small groups, often consisting of extended families, became the bedrock of early human societies. The bonds within these families were simple but essential, ensuring the survival of both individuals and their shared offspring. Cooperation, rather than competition, became the central tenet of their existence. The structure of these early social units was influenced heavily by the need for survival. Hunting and gathering were not tasks that could be accomplished by individuals alone. They required coordinated effort. Cooperation in food gathering allowed these groups to survive, and over time, it fostered deeper relationships and interdependence. Each member of the group had a role, whether it was foraging for plant material, hunting game, or caring for children and the elderly. These roles, although often fluid, began to develop into specialized tasks, creating a rudimentary division of labor. As humans continued to evolve, this division would only grow more complex, but its roots were planted during these early social formations. The most basic of these early social structures was the family unit, but as human populations began to grow, these units expanded into larger, more organized groups. Tribes emerged, drawn together by shared language, customs, and needs. Within these tribes, relationships were based on kinship, but they also required cooperation beyond familial boundaries. Social bonds were extended through shared experiences, like collective hunts or defense against predators. This expanded sense of community fostered a sense of belonging and solidarity that transcended immediate family ties. With the advent of these early social groups, the division of labor became even more pronounced. Men often became the primary hunters, while women gathered food and cared for the children. However, this division was not rigid roles, shifted depending on the needs of the group and the seasons. There was also a growing recognition that tasks needed to be specialized. For example, someone with a particular talent for crafting tools or making clothing might have been given that responsibility, while others focused on food production or shelter building. This early division of labor allowed for greater efficiency and resource management, which in turn enhanced the overall survival of the group. As cooperation deepened, so did the need for social norms and rules. While these early social structures lacked formal governance, there were unspoken codes of behavior that ensured the group functioned smoothly. Leaders, often chosen for their strength, wisdom, or experience, emerged to guide the group during times of conflict or decision-making. Over time, these roles would formalize into more structured leadership, but the foundation was laid in these early tribal formations. Cooperation and the division of labor were the cornerstones of these early human communities, setting the stage for the more complex societies to come. The environment has always been a powerful force in shaping human history, its influence felt in the earliest stages of human development. Early humans were deeply connected to their surroundings, dependent on the land and its resources for survival. Their homes were not permanent, but shaped by the ebb and flow of nature, with the landscape determining where they could hunt, gather, and seek shelter. The savannas of Africa, vast and open, provided a hunting ground where humans learned to move as a group, tracking prey over long distances. These open spaces were both a challenge and an opportunity, encouraging early humans to develop complex tools, social cooperation, and strategies to survive. The challenges of these environments taught humans how to adapt, influencing not only their physical survival, but also their evolution. In addition to the savannas, early humans also took refuge in caves and sheltered areas, seeking protection from the harsh elements and predators. These caves provided more than just safety. They served as the first places where humans began to form early communities, offering both physical shelter and the psychological comfort of space shared with others. Some of the earliest evidence of human culture can be found in cave paintings and artifacts discovered within these spaces, a testament to the profound relationship humans developed with their environment. These shelters, while simple, offered a place for reflection and expression, marking the beginning of a connection to place that would continue to shape human identity. The environment's impact was not just limited to the immediate surroundings. The shifting climates played a significant role in the migration patterns of early humans. As the Earth's climate underwent dramatic changes, with ice ages and warming periods, early humans were forced to move. This constant migration was not aimless, but driven by the search for food, favorable climates, and new territories to settle. The steady movement across continents, from Africa to the Middle East, and later into Europe and Asia, helped shape the diversity of early human populations. These migrations also created the foundation for the spread of ideas and innovations, from the development of tools to the exchange of cultural practices. As climate patterns shifted, the ability of early humans to adapt to new environments was tested. Drier periods led to the depletion of resources in some areas, while warmer, wetter periods allowed for the flourishing of new plant and animal life. Over time, humans began to notice patterns in the environment and realized that some areas offered more predictable resources than others. This realization laid the groundwork for a significant shift in human history, the transition from a nomadic, hunter-gatherer lifestyle to settled farming communities. Agriculture became a means to manage the environment rather than merely respond to it, enabling humans to control their food supply and settle in one place. This shift, driven by environmental factors, would alter the course of human development, leading to the rise of villages, towns, and eventually cities. Thus, the environment was not just a backdrop to human history, but a dynamic force that shaped the way humans lived, migrated, and thrived. The interplay between climate, landscape, and human ingenuity catalyzed the gradual transformation from wandering bands to established societies, setting the stage for the rise of agriculture and the development of civilization. The emergence of language is one of the most profound shifts in the history of humanity, marking the point where early humans transitioned from isolated beings to cooperative, social creatures capable of complex thought and interaction. In the earliest days, communication among humans was likely limited to gestures, facial expressions, and simple vocalizations, enough to signal basic needs or emotions. However, as the challenges of survival grew, so did the necessity for more sophisticated means of sharing information. The birth of language did not happen overnight. It was a gradual process, shaped by the demands of social life and survival. Language evolved as a tool for cooperation. In small groups, early humans began to rely on communication to coordinate hunting, gather resources, and protect each other from predators. The ability to communicate intentions, warn of danger, or share the locations of food sources would have given those who could speak an immense advantage over those who could not. Early vocalizations became more nuanced, and over generations, these simple sounds evolved into words and sentences that could convey increasingly complex ideas. Language, at its core, was a tool that helped groups work together, ensuring mutual survival through coordinated effort. As early humans began to form larger, more permanent settlements, language took on new roles. It became a way to establish social bonds, strengthen group identity, and navigate the complexities of larger communities. Language was no longer just about survival, it became integral to culture. Stories were passed down through generations, shaping mythologies and traditions that would define each group's identity. Through storytelling, early humans could explain the world around them, create shared histories, and bond over collective experiences. These early narratives were often deeply rooted in the environment, their surroundings, and the challenges they faced, but they also marked the beginning of a shared human imagination that could transcend the present moment and look toward the future. Language also became central to the development of trade. As humans began to exchange goods and ideas across wider territories, the need for a common means of communication grew. Words were used to establish trust, negotiate prices, and outline agreements. In a world where barter systems dominated, language became the bridge between cultures, enabling not only the exchange of goods, but also the exchange of knowledge. Trade routes, whether they spanned across neighbouring tribes or distant regions, would have been impossible without the linguistic flexibility to convey the needs, wants, and expectations of both parties. The role of language in social bonding cannot be overstated. Beyond mere survival, language created relationships. It allowed humans to express emotions, share experiences, and form alliances. The complexities of human society, the rituals, the rules, the social structures, depended on language to function and thrive. As communities grew, so did the need for more sophisticated means of communication, eventually giving rise to written language. In the centuries to come, this would lead to the recording of history, laws, and philosophy, transforming not just how humans communicated, but how they understood themselves and their place in the world. The birth of language marked the beginning of a new era for humanity, one in which thought, culture, and cooperation could be shared, refined, and passed down through generations. It was not just a tool for survival, it was the key that unlocked human potential. The discovery of agriculture marked a revolutionary turning point in the history of humanity. For countless millennia, early humans had relied on hunting and gathering, moving with the seasons and adapting to the rhythms of nature. Their survival depended on the unpredictable availability of food, and their lives were inherently nomadic, with groups following animal herds and seasonal plant growth. However, something changed around 10,000 years ago, as humans began to recognize the potential in the land itself. The seeds of agriculture were sown not as a grand plan, but through a slow accumulation of knowledge over generations. Early humans began to experiment with cultivating wild plants. They noticed that certain areas of land consistently produced abundant food, and these areas often provided more stable and reliable sources of nourishment. Gradually, humans began to tend these plants, selecting the best seeds to plant and nurturing them in controlled environments. The first domesticated crops were likely cereals, such as wheat and barley, which grew well in the fertile river valleys of the Near East. As these early farmers sowed their seeds, they also cultivated a deeper connection to the land and the cycles of nature. Simultaneously, the domestication of animals began to shape human life in profound ways. Early humans had hunted animals for food, but gradually they began to tame and raise certain species. Sheep, goats, cattle, and pigs were among the first animals to be domesticated. These animals provided not only a reliable food source, but also materials for clothing, tools, and shelter. Over time, domesticated animals became an integral part of human life, providing labour in the form of ploughing fields and carrying goods, thus increasing agricultural productivity. The relationship between humans and animals evolved, with early humans assuming a more active role in controlling and shaping the lives of the creatures they kept. The transition to agriculture had far-reaching consequences. As food production became more reliable and surplus crops began to accumulate, humans no longer needed to constantly move in search of food. They began to settle in one place, creating permanent dwellings and establishing villages. This shift from a nomadic to a sedentary lifestyle led to the growth of communities, and with it, the development of new social structures. As populations grew, so did the need for organisation and cooperation. The division of labour increased, with some people focusing on farming, others on tool-making, and still others on trading. Social hierarchies began to form, and for the first time, humans could accumulate wealth in the form of stored food and livestock. With the advent of agriculture, societies became more complex. Humans were no longer just surviving, they were thriving. They began to develop new technologies, such as irrigation systems to water crops, and constructed permanent dwellings and fortifications. As they tamed the land, they also started to reshape their world in ways that would last for millennia. Agriculture was not just a means of survival, it was the foundation upon which civilizations were built. The domestication of plants and animals changed human lifestyles in ways that would ripple through time, leading to the rise of cities, writing, and the eventual formation of the great empires of antiquity. It was, without question, a turning point that forever altered the course of human history. The shift from a nomadic existence to permanent settlement marked a profound transformation in early human history. As humans mastered agriculture and began to cultivate crops and domesticate animals, the necessity for constant movement diminished. People no longer had to chase the changing seasons or follow the migratory patterns of game. Instead, they could settle in one place and establish permanent homes, laying the groundwork for the first villages. These early settlements began to appear around 10,000 years ago, particularly in regions where the land was fertile and water sources abundant. The first villages were humble by modern standards. Simple mud brick dwellings or thatched huts were built to provide shelter from the elements. Over time, these homes clustered together to form communities, with families living side by side, engaging in the shared tasks of farming, herding, and communal care. Unlike their ancestors who had lived in small, mobile groups, these early villagers began to form more complex social bonds. Living in close quarters required cooperation, and as the population grew, people needed to work together to maintain their settlements. There was a growing need for systems of organization, including the division of labor. Some villagers specialized in farming, others in animal husbandry, while some may have begun to craft tools, pottery, or textiles. This marked the beginning of a more diversified economy, with trade becoming an increasingly important aspect of village life. Settling in one place also posed new challenges. The stability of food sources meant that villages could grow, but with growth came the need for more resources and better management of the land. Early humans had to learn to adapt to their environment in ways they hadn't before. Irrigation systems were developed to water crops, and early forms of architecture emerged, with homes and public buildings designed to be both functional and defensible. As villages became more established, the inhabitants had to grapple with issues of land ownership, the distribution of resources, and social organization. Leadership structures began to take form, with the emergence of elders or chieftains who helped manage the community's affairs. However, settling in one place also meant that people had to protect their resources. The newfound stability of village life made them attractive targets for neighbouring groups who might not have had the same access to fertile land or food. Early villages began to build walls, fences, and other fortifications to defend against these external threats. Social tension also grew, as people who had once shared everything in a nomadic lifestyle now faced the challenges of resource scarcity and inequality. This would lay the foundation for class divisions, with wealth and power beginning to accumulate in the hands of those who controlled the land or had access to important resources. Despite these challenges, the rise of the first villages was an undeniable milestone in human history. The ability to settle in one place allowed for the development of more complex societies, including the birth of cities, the creation of permanent infrastructure, and the growth of culture and tradition. The innovations and adaptations made by early villagers formed the bedrock of the civilizations that would eventually rise, shaping the course of human history for millennia to come. As humans settled into permanent villages and communities, the need for trade began to emerge. No longer did groups need to rely solely on what they could produce or gather within their immediate surroundings. As villages expanded and specialized labor developed, certain areas began to produce surplus goods, whether in the form of food, crafted tools, pottery, or textiles. This surplus allowed people to engage in exchange, not just within their own communities, but with neighbouring settlements as well. The idea of bartering goods for something that was needed or desired became a cornerstone of early economies. The first forms of trade were local and informal. Villages near one another would exchange goods, sometimes in markets or communal gatherings. Early trade was largely driven by necessity. One community might have an abundance of grain, while another had a surplus of fish or pottery. However, over time, these simple exchanges evolved. People began to see the potential for obtaining goods that were not locally available, whether for practical purposes or for cultural and symbolic value. This marked the early stages of long-distance trade, where goods, ideas, and technologies began to spread across greater distances. Trade routes started to form between regions as people sought out rare or valuable items. The earliest trade routes were often based on natural pathways, rivers, mountain passes, or overland trails that connected different regions. As communities interacted with one another, they also shared knowledge and innovations. Technologies, such as metalworking or the wheel, were spread through trade, as were cultural practices and even religious beliefs. The exchange of ideas was just as significant as the exchange of material goods, leading to the development of shared languages, artistic traditions, and societal norms. The significance of trade networks grew as societies began to develop more complex structures. Specialized goods, such as precious metals, textiles, and ceramics, were traded for agricultural products, tools, and luxury items. The exchange of goods brought with it the introduction of new technologies and resources. For example, the trade of copper and tin led to the development of bronze, a material that revolutionized toolmaking, weaponry, and architecture. Similarly, the movement of exotic goods, such as spices, dyes, and textiles, reflected growing connections between distant cultures. As trade expanded, the need for more formalized systems of exchange arose. Early forms of currency, such as cowrie shells or precious metals, emerged to simplify transactions. Towns and villages that were located along major trade routes began to grow into thriving centers of commerce. This growth of trade hubs, such as those along the Mediterranean coast or in the Middle East, was crucial to the development of early cities and kingdoms. These hubs not only facilitated economic exchange, but also became focal points for cultural exchange, fostering the spread of art, religion, and innovations across vast distances. In many ways, early trade networks laid the groundwork for the interconnected world we live in today. They connected diverse cultures, allowing them to share resources, ideas, and technologies, and helped to build the foundation for the complex global economy that would evolve over millennia. As people traveled further, traded more widely, and exchanged more sophisticated goods, the human world grew smaller, united through the flow of goods and the exchange of knowledge. As human societies grew in complexity, the need for leadership became increasingly evident. Early human groups, once organized around familial ties or small tribes, began to face challenges that required more formalized systems of leadership and governance. The very survival of a community now hinged on the ability to manage resources, negotiate conflicts, and plan for the future. Leaders began to emerge, not just as heads of families or warriors, but as figures of authority who could guide the larger group in making decisions that affected everyone. The earliest forms of leadership were often based on respect, strength, and wisdom. Tribal chiefs or elders were selected for their ability to lead during times of crisis, whether through military conflict or natural disasters. These leaders were often chosen from the most experienced or charismatic individuals within a group. Their authority was generally not enforced by formal systems of law or coercion, but derived from respect for their judgment and experience. They made decisions based on consensus or through their influence over the group, leading with the belief that their decisions were in the best interests of the people they governed. As villages and early cities began to take shape, the complexity of leadership grew. The emergence of trade, specialized labor, and agriculture meant that societies were no longer composed of small, homogeneous groups, but rather of diverse communities that required more formal systems of governance. Leaders became responsible not only for making decisions in times of peace or war, but also for managing resources, organizing labor, and administering justice. These leaders often needed to work alongside others in similar positions to coordinate the functioning of an increasingly interconnected society. Over time, leadership became more institutionalized, and the foundations for organized governance were laid. In many early societies, leadership and religion became deeply intertwined. Priests, or religious figures, were often as influential as tribal chiefs, and in some cases, the two roles were combined. The belief that rulers had a divine mandate to govern their people became central to the structure of power. Religion was not just a personal belief system, but a tool that leaders could use to consolidate their authority. Temples were built to house the gods, and sacrifices or rituals were performed to ensure divine favor. cementing the leader's position as the intermediary between the people and the divine. As these societies expanded, early forms of organized religion helped to unite people under a common set of beliefs. Religious leaders not only guided spiritual practices, but also served as advisors to political rulers, their influence extending beyond the sacred realm into the daily affairs of governance. This integration of political and religious leadership laid the groundwork for theocracies that would shape many ancient civilizations. The rise of the first leaders marked a fundamental shift in human history. These leaders, whether they were warlords, priests, or tribal chiefs, created the structures that would govern and organize human societies for millennia to come. Through their authority and vision, they set the foundations for the future development of laws, political institutions, and religious practices, all of which would continue to evolve as civilization advanced. As early humans settled into more permanent communities, their connection to the world around them deepened, leading to the birth of religious beliefs and practices. The need to explain the forces of nature, the cycles of life, and the mysteries of death became fundamental to human experience. This quest for understanding gave rise to spiritual and religious systems that sought to make sense of the world in ways that were both practical and profound. Early humans, in their vulnerability, began to look for higher powers that could influence their fate. The natural environment, with its unpredictable forces, storms, droughts, floods, and seasons became central to early religious thought. Early humans saw these forces not as random, but as controlled by unseen powers. These powers, often personified as gods, spirits, or ancestors, were believed to shape the world's events. The rising and setting of the sun, the changing of seasons, and the fertility of the land were all seen as manifestations of divine influence. In the search for stability and survival, humans began to develop rituals, prayers, and offerings to appease these forces, hoping to ensure their favor and protection. Early religious practices were often tied to the cycles of nature and agricultural life. As humans began to cultivate the land, they recognized the importance of fertility and the need for good harvests to survive. This focus on fertility became a central theme in many early belief systems, with gods and goddesses associated with the earth, plants, and animals. Temples and sacred spaces were often constructed near fertile land, where offerings and sacrifices were made to ensure the abundance of crops and animals. These rituals, deeply rooted in the cycles of nature, became the cornerstone of early religious practice. Shamanism, the belief that certain individuals had the power to communicate with the spiritual world, also emerged during this time. Shamans acted as intermediaries between the living and the divine, performing rituals, healing practices, and divination to guide the community. These spiritual leaders were often revered for their perceived ability to tap into a realm beyond the physical world, offering insight into future events, healing ailments, or interpreting dreams. Their connection to the divine was seen as essential for the well-being of the tribe or community, reinforcing the importance of spirituality in daily life. As human societies grew in size and complexity, so did their religious practices. The early human quest for understanding, meaning, and connection to the divine shaped not only the spiritual landscape, but also the cultural and social structures of early civilizations. The rise of organized religion brought about more formalized rituals, priesthoods, and temples, transforming religion from a personal and community-based practice to a more institutionalized force within society. The development of early religion and spirituality was a critical step in the evolution of human culture. It provided answers to the deepest questions about existence, offered solace in times of uncertainty, and created a shared framework for understanding the world. In doing so, Religion became an integral part of the fabric of early societies, laying the foundation for the complex belief systems that would continue to shape civilizations for millennia to come. The Neolithic Revolution marks one of the most significant turning points in human history, reshaping the way humans lived, interacted, and perceived the world around them. Prior to this period, humans had lived as hunter-gatherers, dependent on the unpredictable rhythms of nature for survival. They followed migratory patterns, moved with the seasons, and hunted or gathered what was available. Yet, as the climate changed and the earth warmed, humans began to observe the cycles of the seasons more closely and found ways to influence the environment for their own benefit. This led to the radical shift toward agriculture and permanent settlement. The first evidence of farming began in the Fertile Crescent, where the domestication of wild plants like wheat, barley, and rye allowed humans to grow food in one place. This shift away from a nomadic lifestyle towards sedentary farming communities had profound social, economic, and cultural implications. As people began to grow crops and domesticate animals such as goats, sheep, and cattle, food production became more reliable and human populations began to grow. This surplus of food allowed communities to settle in one place, build permanent homes, and start developing larger and more complex social structures. Agriculture was not the only advancement during the Neolithic period. Pottery and weaving emerged as key technological innovations that transformed daily life. Pottery allowed for the storage and transport of surplus food, ensuring that communities could survive through harsh winters or times of drought. It also became an essential medium for artistic expression. Weaving, too, was a monumental breakthrough. The ability to create textiles from plants and animal fibers not only enhanced daily life, but also allowed for the exchange of goods, as woven products became valuable trade items. With these new advancements came the rise of specialized labor, the need for tools, pottery, clothing, and food storage created a division of labor within these newly formed communities. Some people focused on farming, while others became artisans, creating pottery or weaving textiles. These specializations allowed for the growth of complex trade networks, where communities could exchange goods and ideas, linking distant regions together in ways never seen before. However, this surplus of goods and the rise of trade also led to social stratification, with some people accumulating wealth and power, while others remained at the bottom of the social hierarchy. Economically, the Neolithic Revolution led to the development of the first forms of wealth. With food and other resources now being stored, it became possible to accumulate surplus. This wealth was often the basis for the development of early forms of property and ownership. As these communities grew and became more complex, the first villages and towns began to emerge. People built permanent structures and began to focus on construction, trade, and the management of resources. These social changes, however, also brought about challenges, including the need for more organized systems of governance to maintain order and manage resources. The Neolithic Revolution set the stage for everything that followed in human history. It was a time of radical change, as humans moved from dependence on nature to control over it. The advances made in agriculture, pottery, and weaving laid the foundation for the rise of early civilizations and shaped the course of human development for millennia. The transformation from hunter-gatherers to settled agriculturalists was not merely a shift in lifestyle, but the beginning of a new chapter in the human story, one that would eventually lead to cities, empires, and the complex societies that would define the ancient world. The emergence of the first cities marked a dramatic shift in human civilization, as small, scattered communities transformed into bustling urban centers that would become the foundations of complex societies. This urbanization began in fertile river valleys like Mesopotamia and the Nile, where the environment supported the growth of agriculture on a scale never before seen. These areas offered rich soil and reliable water sources, enabling the development of surplus food, which in turn supported larger populations. The ability to produce more than what was immediately needed allowed people to settle permanently, leading to the creation of towns and cities that would serve as hubs of culture, trade, and governance. In Mesopotamia, the Sumerians were among the first to create city-states, each with its own walls, rulers, and social structures. The cities of Uruk, and Lagash became thriving centers of life, where people lived in organized communities, engaged in specialized labor, and interacted in ways that were unprecedented. These cities became symbols of human achievement, with monumental architecture, such as ziggurats, temples, and city walls, showcasing the growing technological and artistic capabilities of the time. The development of writing, in the form of cuneiform, allowed for the recording of laws, trade transactions, and religious practices, providing a means for future generations to understand their past and organize their present. Similarly, along the banks of the Nile, the cities of ancient Egypt began to take shape. Egypt's cities, including Thebes and Memphis, flourished under the reliable annual flooding of the Nile River, which deposited nutrient-rich silt, making agriculture in the region highly productive. The abundance of food and resources enabled the construction of monumental structures, like the pyramids and temples, which became central to Egyptian religious and political life. Cities in Egypt were not just centers of trade or agriculture. They were the embodiment of divine order, where the pharaoh, as a living god, ruled over both the physical and spiritual realms. Egyptian society was highly stratified, and the cities reflected this with distinct areas for the elite, the temple clergy, artisans, and laborers. As cities grew, they became places where new ideas and technologies flourished. Urban centers allowed for specialization in crafts and trades, leading to advancements in metallurgy, textiles, and pottery. These innovations were not confined to the cities themselves, but spread through trade, connecting various regions and peoples. The growth of cities also gave rise to the need for more complex social structures and governance. As populations grew, so did the need for laws and systems of justice. Early cities saw the emergence of rulers and administrators who not only governed day-to-day life, but also oversaw the construction of infrastructure such as roads, irrigation systems, and marketplaces. The rise of the first cities was a critical moment in the history of humanity. It marked the transition from small, isolated communities to interconnected centers of culture, economy, and politics. The role of cities in shaping human society cannot be overstated, as they laid the foundation for all future civilizations. They brought people together in ways that had never been possible before, allowing for the exchange of goods, ideas, and culture. Cities became the places where human ingenuity and ambition could truly take flight, forever altering the course of history. The invention of writing marked one of the most transformative moments in human history, enabling the recording of ideas, events, and transactions in ways that transcended oral tradition. Before writing, knowledge was passed down through stories and memory, often subject to alteration over time. But with the development of written language, humans gained the ability to preserve information with accuracy and consistency, ensuring its transmission across generations. The earliest forms of writing emerged in societies where complex administration and trade required reliable record-keeping, and the need for a permanent means of communication became undeniable. In Mesopotamia, One of the first writing systems emerged around 3500 BCE. Known as cuneiform, this system began as a set of pictographs, simple images that represented objects or ideas. As the needs of early urban societies grew more complex, these symbols evolved into a more abstract form, where each mark represented a sound or syllable rather than just a tangible object. Cuneiform was initially used for practical purposes, such as recording trade transactions, land ownership, and agricultural yields. As time passed, it also became a tool for preserving literature, laws, and religious texts. Most famously exemplified by the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the earliest known works of literature. Meanwhile, in ancient Egypt, another writing system was developing around 3000 BCE. Egyptian hieroglyphs, with their intricate and highly stylized symbols, were initially used for monumental inscriptions, adorning the walls of temples and tombs. These symbols could represent objects, sounds, or ideas, and over time they became more refined, enabling the recording of both religious and governmental matters. Hieroglyphs played a crucial role in Egyptian culture, helping to cement the idea of divine kingship. As many royal decrees and religious texts were inscribed on the walls of the great pyramids and temples, the preservation of knowledge through hieroglyphs helped shape the ancient Egyptian worldview, intertwining the sacred and the secular in the written word. As writing systems spread to other cultures, they took on different forms, influenced by local needs and technologies. The Phoenicians, for example, developed an alphabet around 1200 BCE, which was simpler than cuneiform or hieroglyphs, and used a set of symbols to represent individual sounds. This made writing more accessible and efficient, as it required fewer symbols to express the full range of human speech. The Phoenician alphabet would go on to influence the development of Greek and Latin scripts, laying the foundation for much of the writing systems used in the Western world today. The invention of writing revolutionized human civilization. It allowed for the precise recording of laws, treaties, and religious beliefs, making it possible for societies to function on a much larger scale. With written language, the preservation of culture, history, and knowledge became possible in ways that had never been imagined before. Writing systems allowed people to communicate over long distances, record the passage of time, and build a collective memory that would survive long after they were gone. It connected generations, ensuring that the lessons and achievements of the past were passed down to future societies. In this way, the written word not only revolutionized communication, but also helped to shape the trajectory of human progress. The birth of trade empires marks a pivotal shift in the development of ancient civilizations, as early societies progressed from simple agricultural communities to complex urban centers. The need for goods, resources, and ideas from distant lands began to shape the course of history. These growing city-states and kingdoms, located in fertile river valleys like the Tigris, Euphrates, Nile, and Indus, became central hubs of trade, which not only fueled their economic expansion, but also facilitated their rise to power through both commerce and military conquest. In Mesopotamia, the Sumerians were among the first to establish a sophisticated trade network. The abundance of natural resources, such as fertile soil for agriculture, attracted traders from surrounding regions who sought Sumerian goods, including grain, textiles, and pottery. The Sumerians, in turn, needed materials they did not have, like timber, metals, and precious stones. To meet these demands, they developed trade routes extending from the Arabian Peninsula to the Mediterranean. By navigating these routes, the Sumerians formed the basis for the world's first trade empire, accumulating wealth and influence that helped them expand their territory through conquest. The rise of powerful city-states like and Uruk was not only a result of military strength but also their role as major trading hubs, with a system of writing cuneiform that kept meticulous records of transactions and legal agreements, marking the importance of trade in the establishment of centralized authority. Simultaneously, ancient Egypt flourished through its trade networks along the Nile River. Unlike the Sumerians, who often relied on warfare to expand their empires, the Egyptians emphasized trade diplomacy and strategic alliances. Egypt's wealth and resources, particularly its gold, grain, and papyrus, made it a sought-after partner for neighboring regions. The Egyptians traded extensively with regions as far away as the Levant, Nubia, and Punt. The flow of goods through these networks enabled the pharaohs to amass wealth, which they used to fund military campaigns, monument-building projects, and lavish courts. This economic prosperity allowed Egypt to grow into one of the ancient world's most enduring empires, its power reinforced by a strong centralized government and a highly developed administrative system. Meanwhile, across the Indian subcontinent, the Indus Valley Civilization, with its advanced urban planning and sophisticated craftsmanship, became another key center for ancient trade. The people of the Indus Valley traded cotton, textiles, and pottery with Mesopotamia and Persia. Their major trading cities, such as Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, became bustling centers of commerce and culture. The Indus traders not only exchanged material goods, but also fostered cultural connections that helped spread ideas, technologies, and religious practices across the ancient world. Though the decline of the Indus Valley Civilization remains a mystery, its role in early global trade is undeniable, serving as a crucial link in the web of ancient commerce. The rise of trade empires was not limited to these regions. Ancient trade routes connected the Mediterranean world to Africa, Asia, and beyond, allowing empires to emerge, thrive, and collapse in the centuries to come. Through trade, these ancient civilizations grew wealthy and powerful, shaping the geopolitical landscape for generations. Trade fostered the exchange of goods, but also ideas, creating a foundation for the cultural and technological advancements that would define the ancient world and lay the groundwork for the empires that would follow. The birth of trade empires was not simply about acquiring wealth, it was about securing power, influence, and the very future of human civilization. As early civilizations flourished, the need for order and justice within rapidly growing urban centers became increasingly evident. Societies that had once relied on oral traditions, customs, and informal agreements began to realize the necessity of formalized laws to govern the actions of individuals, maintain social stability, and regulate interactions between various groups. The creation of law codes marked a pivotal development in human history, with the establishment of written laws serving as a cornerstone of governance in ancient societies. The earliest and most famous example of written law comes from the reign of Hammurabi, the sixth king of the Babylonian Empire, who ruled in the 18th century BCE. The Code of Hammurabi, one of the first and most comprehensive written legal systems in history, was etched into a stone stele and placed in public view for all to see. This act of public display was crucial, as it ensured that the laws were not kept hidden or subject to arbitrary enforcement, but rather were known to all members of society. The laws covered a wide range of issues, from property disputes and family law to trade regulations and criminal justice. It was, in essence, an effort to standardize and codify rules that would apply equally to all citizens, regardless of their social standing. The impact of the Code of Hammurabi and other law codes that followed was profound. By creating a set of written rules that applied uniformly, rulers were able to ensure that justice was administered consistently. Before the creation of formal law codes, disputes were often settled through personal retribution or by relying on the discretion of local leaders or priests, leaving room for corruption and unfair practices. Written laws removed much of this subjectivity, providing a clear framework for resolving conflicts. Additionally, these laws helped solidify the power of the rulers as they positioned themselves as the ultimate arbiters of justice, with the law serving as a tool of political control. Other civilizations, such as the ancient Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans, also developed their own legal systems, each tailored to their cultural and political contexts. The Egyptians, for instance, had a legal system that was deeply intertwined with their religious beliefs, with laws reflecting the divine will of the gods. In ancient Greece, the concept of democracy allowed for the development of laws that emphasized participation and citizenship, while Roman law introduced a sophisticated legal framework that would later influence legal systems in Europe and beyond. The establishment of written law codes had far-reaching consequences on social stability and governance. It allowed for the creation of more complex and organized societies by ensuring that individuals and rulers alike were bound by the same set of rules. This system of law made it possible for ancient civilizations to grow more cohesive and unified as it fostered trust in the legal system and minimized the risk of chaos. The written law codes of these early societies became the foundation for the legal systems of the future, laying the groundwork for modern concepts of justice, rights, and governance. In this way, the creation of law codes was not merely about enforcing rules, it was about shaping the very fabric of society, creating a sense of order and fairness that would endure for millennia. As human societies evolved from tribal groups to more complex urban centers, the need for strong, centralized leadership became increasingly apparent. The formation of early kingdoms marked a significant shift in governance, as power began to consolidate in the hands of a single individual or ruling family. This process, known as the rise of monarchy, was not simply a change in leadership style, but also a profound transformation in the way societies organized themselves and understood authority. In ancient Mesopotamia, one of the earliest examples of kingship emerged with the rise of city-states like Sumer. The kings of these early civilizations were not only political leaders, but also seen as divinely appointed figures, intermediaries between the gods and the people. This divine right of kings, a concept that would persist for centuries, meant that rulers held an almost sacred authority, their power rooted in religious belief, as much as in military might or political strategy. The first kings were often military leaders who had successfully united disparate tribes or city-states under their rule, ensuring peace and stability in what were often turbulent times. One of the most famous early monarchs was Sargon of Akkad, who in the 24th century BCE established the Akkadian Empire by conquering a number of Sumerian city-states and creating one of the first true empires in history. His rule marked the beginning of the centralization of power in Mesopotamia, as he established a bureaucracy to help manage his vast empire. Sargon's success set the stage for future kings, who would use military conquest, diplomacy, and religion to solidify their power. Meanwhile, in Egypt, the concept of kingship took on a more deeply religious dimension. The pharaohs were not only the political rulers of Egypt, but were also considered gods themselves, representatives of the divine on earth. This belief in the pharaoh's divine nature helped centralize power, as the king's authority was unquestioned, not just because of military strength, but because it was seen as divinely sanctioned. The early dynastic period of Egypt, beginning around 3100 BCE, with the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt by King Narmer, set the foundation for a centralized monarchy that would endure for millennia. The pharaohs built monumental structures like the pyramids, which were not only tombs, but also symbols of their divine and eternal rule. As these early monarchs solidified their control, they established systems of governance that allowed them to manage larger populations and more complex societies. They created armies to protect their territories, developed legal systems to regulate society, and established religious institutions to further reinforce their authority. The role of the king became inseparable from the idea of order itself, both in the physical world and in the divine realm. The rise of kingship in these early civilizations marked the beginning of a new era in human history. Monarchs became the central figures around which societies revolved, embodying the power, prestige, and divine right that enabled them to rule vast lands and diverse peoples. These first kings and rulers set the precedent for governance that would influence not only the ancient world, but also the development of monarchies in later civilizations throughout history. The rise of monumental architecture marked a pivotal moment in the development of ancient civilizations, reflecting their technological advancements, social hierarchies, and cultural values. These structures, often grand in scale and intricate in design, served not only as physical symbols of power, but also as tangible representations of a society's ability to organize labor, resources, and knowledge. Among the most notable early monuments were the pyramids of Egypt and the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, each standing as a testament to the ambitions of their creators and the complexity of the societies that built them. In Egypt, the construction of the pyramids began as early as the Old Kingdom period, with the most famous being the Great Pyramid of Giza, built for the pharaoh Khufu. These colossal structures were not simply tombs, they were expressions of the divine and the eternal. The pyramids were designed to honor the gods and to ensure the pharaoh's journey to the afterlife. Their construction required an immense workforce, consisting of skilled laborers, architects, and thousands of workers who were organized into teams for various tasks. The scale of the pyramids required advanced knowledge of engineering, mathematics, and labor management, marking a significant leap in both technological innovation and social organization. The construction of the pyramids was deeply intertwined with Egypt's social and religious fabric. The ability to build such monumental structures was a reflection of the centralized power of the pharaoh, who, as both a political and divine ruler, was able to marshal resources on an unprecedented scale. These projects also highlighted the rigid social hierarchy of ancient Egypt, where the laborers and craftsmen were organized under the authority of royal officials. The grandeur of the pyramids was not just for the pharaoh's benefit, but was also intended to demonstrate the might and stability of the Egyptian state, reinforcing the connection between the king and the gods. In Mesopotamia, the ziggurats served a similar purpose, but were distinct in their form and function. These massive stepped structures were built in the heart of Sumerian, Akkadian, and later Babylonian cities. Rising high above the surrounding landscape, the ziggurats were dedicated to the gods and were thought to bridge the gap between heaven and earth, allowing the priests and rulers to communicate with the divine. Unlike the pyramids, which were primarily tombs, the ziggurats were temples where rituals and offerings were made to the gods. The ziggurat of Ur, built during the reign of King Ur-Nammu, is one of the most famous examples of this architectural style. Its construction required the development of advanced brickmaking techniques and immense labor forces, who toiled under the command of the city's rulers. Both the pyramids and ziggurats were not just physical structures, but also powerful symbols of the political and religious ideologies of their respective cultures. They reflected the belief that the rulers were divinely ordained to govern, and that the state's prosperity was tied to maintaining harmony with the gods. The labor needed to build these monuments was a reflection of the social stratification present in these ancient societies. where the majority of people worked not just for survival but to fulfill the religious and royal ambitions of the elite. Monumental architecture in these early civilizations, with its vast scale and intricate design, revealed the growing complexity of human society. These structures were not merely physical feats of engineering. They embodied the very identity of the civilizations that created them, encapsulating their technological prowess, religious beliefs, and social structures in stone and brick. Through these monumental projects, early civilizations demonstrated their ability to shape the landscape and assert their place in history. Early warfare played a crucial role in shaping the trajectory of ancient civilizations, influencing their rise, expansion, and eventual decline. The development of military tactics and technologies marked a significant turning point, as societies began to recognize the importance of organized combat and the need for specialized forces to protect their lands, assert dominance, and secure resources. Warfare became not only a tool of survival, but also a means of political expression, with kingdoms and empires often rising and falling based on their ability to wage effective wars. The advent of chariots was one of the earliest and most transformative military innovations. In ancient Mesopotamia and Egypt, chariots provided a formidable advantage in battle. These two-wheeled vehicles, drawn by horses, enabled warriors to move rapidly across the battlefield, offering both mobility and speed. The chariot's effectiveness lay not only in its ability to carry soldiers into battle, but also in its capacity to serve as a platform for archers and spearmen, providing them with the mobility to strike from a distance. The introduction of chariotry in ancient warfare revolutionized combat, allowing armies to maneuver quickly and decisively, often overwhelming opponents who relied on foot soldiers alone. In tandem with the chariot, the development of early forms of armor and weaponry further advanced military capabilities. The first armor used by ancient warriors was likely made from simple materials like leather or animal hide, offering basic protection against arrows and blades. However, as warfare became more complex, so did the need for better protection. Metal armor, such as the bronze helmets and cuirasses used by the Egyptians and the Greeks, began to appear, providing superior defense against bladed weapons and projectiles. The shift to metal armor marked an important technological leap, as it allowed warriors to withstand more formidable blows and fight longer in the chaos of battle. Early weaponry also evolved alongside these technological advances. The spear, an essential weapon in ancient armies, underwent various improvements. Its longer reach and the ability to throw it from a distance made it a favored weapon among both infantry and cavalry. The bow and arrow, too, became vital tools in warfare, allowing soldiers to engage enemies from afar with great accuracy. The development of slings and later the introduction of early siege weapons, such as the battering ram and siege towers, enabled armies to breach city walls and fortifications, adding a new layer of complexity to warfare. Warfare, however, was not only about the technology used on the battlefield, but also about the strategic thinking that accompanied it. Early civilizations began to realize the importance of organization, logistics, and supply chains in war. Armies were no longer just groups of men charging into battle. They were carefully structured entities with specialized units and leadership positions designed to maximize effectiveness. Ancient leaders, such as the pharaohs of Egypt or the kings of Mesopotamia, understood that maintaining a powerful military required constant training, a reliable supply of resources, and the ability to adapt to the changing tactics of their enemies. The role of warfare in the rise and fall of civilizations is undeniable. It was often through military conquest that early empires expanded their territories, securing vital resources and asserting dominance over neighboring peoples. Yet, the very same warfare that enabled their growth also led to their demise. The constant strain of military campaigns drained resources, and the failure to adapt to new technologies or tactics often resulted in the downfall of once great civilizations. As civilizations rose, they frequently collided with other burgeoning empires, and those that failed to keep pace with the evolving art of war fell into decline, their armies overwhelmed by more technologically advanced or strategically savvy foes. In this way, warfare served as both the engine of ancient empires and their ultimate undoing. The emergence of early philosophical thought marked a profound shift in human understanding as thinkers began to explore questions about existence, morality, the nature of the universe, and the principles that govern society. In ancient societies, this intellectual movement arose from a desire to comprehend not only the physical world, but also the forces that influenced human behavior and relationships. As civilizations grew more complex, so too did the questions people asked about their place in the cosmos, the organization of society, and the ideals that could guide individual and collective conduct. In China, one of the most influential figures in early philosophy was Confucius, whose teachings became the cornerstone of Chinese thought for centuries. Born in 551 BCE, Confucius focused on ethics, personal morality, and the role of individuals within society. He believed that a well-ordered society could only exist if individuals cultivated virtuous behavior, with respect to others being paramount. His teachings emphasized the importance of filial piety, social harmony, and the need for rulers to be moral exemplars. Confucius's ideas about the role of government were deeply tied to his vision of a well-structured society in which people, from rulers to commoners, knew their roles and acted according to moral principles. Although Confucius was not the only thinker of his time, his legacy has endured for thousands of years, shaping Chinese culture and governance. In ancient Greece, the birth of philosophical inquiry was sparked by the curiosity of thinkers who sought to explain the natural world and human existence without resorting to mythological explanations. Philosophers like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle laid the foundation for much of Western thought. Socrates, born in Athens around 470 BCE, is often regarded as the father of Western philosophy. He did not write down his ideas, but his method of questioning, known as the Socratic method, encouraged critical thinking and the pursuit of knowledge through dialogue. Socrates believed that knowledge was a means to achieve virtue and that understanding the essence of concepts like justice, courage, and truth was essential for living a good life. Plato, Socrates' student, expanded upon his teacher's ideas and created a systematic framework for philosophy. He explored the nature of reality, ethics, and the ideal state in his dialogues. His famous concept of the theory of forms posited that the material world was only a shadow of the true, unchanging reality that existed beyond our perception. Plato's ideas about the ideal society, as detailed in his work The Republic, suggested that the just society should be ruled by philosopher kings who could see beyond the physical world and govern based on wisdom and reason. Aristotle, Plato's student, took a different approach, focusing on empirical observation and the classification of knowledge. He believed that human beings could understand the world through their senses, and that reason was the key to uncovering the truth. Aristotle's influence on logic, ethics, and politics is profound. His concept of virtue ethics, which emphasizes the importance of developing good character through habit, continues to be a central idea in moral philosophy. The ideas of these early philosophers helped shape human understanding of ethics, politics, and the cosmos. They laid the groundwork for later intellectual traditions, encouraging people to seek knowledge, ask difficult questions, and engage in the search for truth. Through their teachings, they encourage societies to think critically about human nature and the best ways to organize both individual lives and governments. These thinkers were not just interested in abstract ideas. Their work aimed to improve human society by cultivating wisdom, virtue, and understanding. The invention of money marked a turning point in human history, facilitating trade and economic growth in ways that had never before been possible. Before the advent of money, early human societies relied on bartering, exchanging goods and services directly. While effective to some extent, the barter system was limited by the necessity of a double coincidence of wants. Both parties had to have something the other wanted at the same time. This system worked in small communities, but as societies grew and trade networks expanded, the limitations of bartering became more apparent. The need for a more efficient and universal medium of exchange became clear. The earliest forms of money were not coins or banknotes as we know them today, but commodities that had intrinsic value. In many ancient cultures, items such as grain, cattle, or shells served as a form of exchange. These items were valuable in themselves and could be used directly for consumption. However, as societies evolved, the limitations of such commodities became apparent. They were often bulky, perishable, or difficult to standardize, making long-distance trade and large-scale transactions cumbersome. The first significant leap in the development of money came with the creation of metal coinage. Around 600 BCE, the Lydians, in what is now modern-day Turkey, began minting the first official coins. These early coins were made of electrum, a natural alloy of gold and silver, and were stamped with images to ensure authenticity and weight. Coins provided a portable, durable, and standardized unit of value that could be easily exchanged across vast distances. Their introduction revolutionized trade by simplifying transactions and eliminating the need for barter. The idea of coinage quickly spread throughout the ancient world, with empires and city-states adopting their own forms of money. The Greeks, Romans, Persians, and others followed suit, using coins made from various metals, including copper, silver, and gold. The images on coins often reflected the power and authority of the issuing government, with depictions of rulers, gods, and important symbols. Coins also began to carry inscriptions that denoted their value, helping to standardize their use and ensure their acceptance in trade. The development of money facilitated not only trade, but also the rise of complex economies and the growth of markets. It allowed for the accumulation of wealth and the development of more sophisticated systems of credit and debt. Money became a tool for economic expansion, enabling governments to fund military campaigns, build infrastructure, and promote economic activity. The concept of value, once tied directly to tangible goods, began to shift as money itself became the measure of worth. People began to think of wealth not just in terms of physical commodities, but in terms of the abstract concept of money itself. The invention of money was not just a technological or economic innovation, it represented a profound shift in human thinking. It made possible the large-scale organization of societies, the development of international trade, and the rise of powerful empires. As societies moved from barter to coinage, they opened the door to new forms of economic interaction, laying the foundation for the globalized world that would emerge centuries later. The birth of writing was one of the most transformative moments in human history, allowing societies to preserve their thoughts, laws, and stories for future generations. Before writing, human knowledge and traditions were passed down orally through spoken word and memory. This method of communication, while vital, was limited by the fallibility of memory and the transient nature of speech. As early civilizations developed, there arose a pressing need to record important information, laws, trade transactions, and even religious beliefs in a way that would endure beyond the lives of those who created them. The earliest forms of writing began in Mesopotamia around 3200 BCE, with the Sumerians developing cuneiform script. This system involved the use of wedge-shaped marks pressed into clay tablets, allowing people to keep records, such as inventories, administrative details, and business contracts. Cuneiform was initially a practical tool for the growing bureaucracy of the Sumerian city-states. However, as the system evolved, it began to serve a more profound purpose, capturing the cultural and intellectual life of the people. Writing allowed for the preservation of literature in ways that had never been possible before. One of the earliest and most famous examples of this is the Epic of Gilgamesh, a poem that emerged in Mesopotamia around 2100 BCE. The epic tells the story of Gilgamesh, the king of Uruk, and his quest for immortality. It explores themes of friendship, the nature of human existence, and the search for meaning beyond the grave. What makes the Epic of Gilgamesh so significant is not just its literary merit, but its role in the early development of written culture. It was one of the first works to reflect the human desire to understand the universe, death, and the self, marking the birth of literature as a means of exploring both personal and collective identity. The epic was initially passed down orally, like many other early works, but with the advent of writing, it was transcribed onto clay tablets, ensuring its survival for centuries. The Epic of Gilgamesh was eventually translated and preserved in different forms, passing from one generation to the next. It influenced many other literary traditions and has survived as a testament to the early human pursuit of knowledge through written words. Writing also allowed for the creation of other forms of literature, including hymns, prayers, proverbs, and even the first laws, such as the Code of Hammurabi. These early written works served not only as historical records, but also as a means of shaping the collective consciousness of civilizations. They reflected the values, beliefs, and aspirations of the societies that produced them. As writing systems spread, they became a powerful tool for governing, storytelling, and preserving culture. What began as a practical solution to administrative needs gradually transformed into a means of expressing the depth of human experience, turning writing into one of the most significant achievements in the history of civilization. Through the written word, humanity could now communicate across time, leaving a legacy of thoughts and ideas that would shape the course of history for millennia. Religion was deeply intertwined with the fabric of early civilizations, influencing not only the personal lives of individuals, but also the structure and governance of entire societies. In ancient times, religion provided answers to fundamental questions about life, death, and the nature of the world. It also offered a sense of unity, binding communities together through shared beliefs and rituals. But religion's impact went far beyond the personal and communal sphere. It played a central role in governance, law, and the organization of public life. In many early civilizations, rulers were often seen as divine or as representatives of the gods on earth. This close connection between leadership and religion gave kings and emperors not just political authority, but also spiritual legitimacy. For example, in ancient Egypt, the pharaoh was not only the political ruler, but also considered a living god, the intermediary between the gods and the people. This divine status allowed the pharaohs to wield immense power and control, as their decrees were seen as divinely ordained. Similarly, in Mesopotamia, kings were often regarded as chosen by the gods to maintain order and ensure the prosperity of their cities. The integration of religion into governance also extended to the law. In many early societies, religious principles formed the foundation of legal systems. The Code of Hammurabi, one of the oldest and most famous legal codes, was presented as a set of laws given by the gods, specifically the sun god Shamash. This divine origin of law provided an unshakable authority to the legal system, making it not just a tool for governing, but also a way to enforce religious order. In these societies, there was little distinction between religious and secular life, as the divine was believed to govern every aspect of existence, from the laws of the land to the duties of the ruler. Public life was also shaped by religion. Temples, shrines, and sacred sites were not only places of worship, but also centers of political and social life. In ancient Mesopotamia, the ziggurat, a massive step pyramid structure, was both a religious and political hub. The temple was often the wealthiest institution in the city, controlling land and resources. Priests held significant power, advising kings and performing rituals that were believed to ensure the prosperity and protection of the community. These religious institutions also became centers of learning, preserving knowledge and acting as custodians of sacred texts. In addition to governance, religion played a significant role in shaping daily life. Rituals, festivals, and sacrifices marked the agricultural cycles, ensuring the fertility of the land and the well-being of the people. People's daily actions were often guided by religious beliefs, whether in their interactions with others, their approach to work, or their understanding of life and death. Religion provided moral and ethical frameworks that helped maintain order within society, offering guidance on everything from social behavior to personal conduct. The influence of religion on society in early civilizations cannot be overstated. It shaped governance, laws, and social structures, creating a powerful, unifying force that influenced almost every aspect of life. Through temples, rituals, and divine kingship, religion became the backbone of these early societies, holding them together and guiding their path forward. As civilizations grew and evolved, the integration of religion into public life continued to influence how societies were governed and how individuals related to one another and the divine. Technological advancements in ancient civilizations were fundamental in shaping the way societies functioned and evolved. Early innovations in tools, weapons, and technologies laid the groundwork for the growth of civilizations, impacting everything from agriculture to warfare, trade, and daily life. These developments were not only reflections of human ingenuity, but also of the necessity to adapt to environmental challenges, expanding populations, and the demands of sustaining large, complex societies. One of the most pivotal inventions was the wheel. Initially used in pottery, the wheel's role would expand to transportation, revolutionizing the movement of goods and people. The invention of the wheel enabled the creation of carts and chariots, which played a key role in the development of trade networks. The ability to transport goods over long distances with greater ease allowed for the exchange of products, ideas, and culture between distant regions. The wheel also facilitated military conquests as armies became more mobile and capable of transporting troops, equipment, and supplies efficiently. Metallurgy, the art of working with metals, brought transformative changes in both tools and weapons. The mastery of copper, followed by bronze and later iron, allowed for the creation of stronger and more durable tools, agricultural implements, and weaponry. Early civilizations like the Sumerians and Egyptians began to craft tools that were not only more effective but also more specialized. The production of bronze weapons, for example, gave rise to superior armaments, giving these societies a military edge that would shape the balance of power in the ancient world. Metallurgy also led to the creation of intricate jewelry and art, showcasing the refinement and craftsmanship of these early societies. Perhaps the most significant technological advancement in early civilizations was the development of irrigation systems. Agriculture, which had shifted from subsistence farming to large-scale crop cultivation, relied heavily on the control of water. The Egyptians, Mesopotamians, and Indus Valley civilizations all pioneered irrigation techniques, using canals, dikes, and reservoirs to channel water from rivers to their fields. This technology allowed civilizations to flourish in otherwise arid regions, increasing agricultural output and supporting growing urban populations. Irrigation not only ensured food security but also shaped the social and economic structures of these societies, as control over water resources often meant power and influence. These technological advancements were not isolated innovations, but part of a larger web of development that transformed ancient societies. The creation of cities was made possible through the ability to produce food in surplus, and the wheel, metallurgy, and irrigation enabled trade, warfare, and communication across vast distances. As each of these technologies spread, they were adapted and refined by different cultures, leading to an interconnected world of technological exchange that spanned continents. Early advancements in tools, weapons, and technologies not only allowed ancient civilizations to survive, but also provided the foundation for the continued evolution of human society. They marked the transition from isolated agricultural communities to complex, thriving civilizations that would go on to shape the course of history. In the early civilizations, the roles of women were multifaceted, shaped by the evolving demands of agriculture, trade, and urbanization. As societies transitioned from nomadic to settled lifestyles, the expectations placed upon women began to shift, reflecting broader social, economic, and cultural changes. In these formative societies, women often found themselves balancing the responsibilities of domestic life with more public roles in religion, politics, and economics. With the advent of agriculture, women's roles as cultivators and gatherers became integral to the survival of early communities. In many ancient societies, women were responsible for planting, harvesting, and processing crops, alongside their duties in caring for the household. This shift from a hunting and gathering lifestyle to settled farming meant that women's work was tied directly to food production, which was increasingly centralized and managed in growing urban centers. While men often took on roles that involved the more physically demanding aspects of agriculture, such as ploughing or tending to livestock, women were key to crop cultivation, maintaining the daily agricultural tasks that allowed these early societies to thrive. As cities began to rise in regions like Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Indus Valley, women continued to contribute to their economies through textile production, pottery, and trade. Women often spun wool and wove it into cloth, a crucial industry in many early urban centers. In Mesopotamia, for instance, textiles were a significant part of the economy, and women were both producers and consumers of the goods that were traded. Their role in crafting, whether through spinning, weaving, or pottery, gave them an essential part to play in the economic life of these cities. At the same time, women in these societies were involved in religion, which was often at the heart of political life. In places like Sumer and Egypt, women could hold powerful religious roles as priestesses in temples or in the service of gods. The priestesses were among the most educated women in society, responsible for maintaining the rituals and overseeing temple economies. In Egypt, the title of God's wife of Amun was a prestigious one, and women in this role wielded substantial political and economic power, often managing vast estates and resources. However, despite these significant roles, the broader social structures of many early civilizations tended to prioritize male authority in political and economic leadership. Women's public roles were often confined to specific spheres, such as religion or domestic economies, rather than in governance or military affairs. In the home, women maintained a central role in maintaining the household and family life, which was foundational to the stability of these societies. In both public and private life, women balanced their domestic responsibilities with participation in the rituals, politics, and economy of their societies. While their influence in these spheres varied, women played essential roles in the growth and development of early civilizations, contributing to the complex and interconnected systems of agriculture, trade, religion, and governance. The dynamic roles of women in early civilizations reflect the adaptability and resilience of these societies, where the work and lives of women were integral to their evolution. The rise of the first empires marked a transformative period in ancient history, as small city-states and regions consolidated their power and expanded their territories into vast, unified realms. The Akkadian Empire, founded by Sargon of Akkad around 2334 BCE, stands as one of the earliest examples of imperial expansion. Sargon, a military genius, conquered numerous Sumerian city-states and forged a centralized state that spanned much of Mesopotamia. The Akkadian Empire's influence reshaped the political and cultural landscape of the ancient Near East, uniting a diverse group of people under a single administrative structure. For the first time, the concept of empire, an organized political unit encompassing multiple regions and cultures, became a reality. Sargon's empire was groundbreaking, not only because of its size, but also due to its innovative governance. The Akkadian kings implemented a system of direct rule over their territories, establishing military garrisons and centralizing taxation. This allowed for efficient management and communication across vast distances. Additionally, the Akkadian Empire's spread of the Semitic Akkadian language became a unifying factor, replacing Sumerian in many areas as the language of administration and diplomacy. While the Akkadian Empire eventually collapsed due to internal rebellion and external invasion, its legacy persisted in the region, influencing the development of later empires in Mesopotamia. Meanwhile, in Egypt, the rise of the New Kingdom, around 1550 BCE, marked the beginning of an empire that would dominate northeastern Africa and the Near East for centuries. The New Kingdom, often regarded as Egypt's imperial peak, was characterized by a series of powerful pharaohs who expanded Egyptian influence through military conquests. Pharaohs like Thutmose III and Ramses II led campaigns into the Levant, Nubia, and beyond, establishing Egypt as the dominant power in the eastern Mediterranean. These military expeditions not only expanded Egypt's borders, but also facilitated trade and cultural exchange, bringing Egypt into contact with distant peoples and introducing foreign ideas, art, and technologies. The New Kingdom also saw the construction of monumental architecture, such as the temples of Karnak and the tombs in the Valley of the Kings, which reflected the power and religious devotion of the pharaohs. The concept of the pharaoh as both a political leader and a divine figure was firmly established, with the ruler serving as the intermediary between the gods and the people. This divine kingship provided the foundation for the centralized power that was crucial to the functioning of the empire. Both the Akkadian and Egyptian empires played a significant role in shaping the ancient world. Their military conquests, cultural exchanges, and advancements in governance set the stage for future empires. The idea of empire building, with its systems of administration, military organization, and cultural integration became a model for later civilizations. These empires not only influenced the political structures of the ancient world, but also contributed to the development of trade routes, the spread of ideas, and the diffusion of technological innovations. The legacy of the Akkadian and Egyptian empires endured long after their fall, serving as foundational examples for the empires that would rise in the centuries to come. As ancient civilizations expanded, so did the need for resources, leading to the establishment of long-distance trade routes that connected distant regions. These early global trade networks formed the foundation of the interconnected world that would emerge over millennia. Starting around 3000 BCE, trade between regions such as Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley, Egypt, and China began to flourish, establishing pathways for the exchange of goods, ideas, and technologies. The development of these routes not only facilitated the movement of commodities, but also laid the groundwork for cultural and intellectual exchange across vast distances. The trade networks of the ancient world were often facilitated by the geography of the regions involved. The rivers of Mesopotamia, such as the Tigris and Euphrates, acted as natural highways, enabling goods to be transported across the Fertile Crescent. The Egyptians, with their control of the Nile River, established trade routes that connected them to Nubia, the Levant, and even parts of the Mediterranean. The use of ships along the Red Sea and Mediterranean also allowed for trade with distant lands, such as the Mycenaean, Greeks, and the Phoenicians, who were renowned for their maritime capabilities. The Silk Road, a network of trade routes connecting China to Central Asia, the Middle East, and Europe, emerged as one of the most significant trade routes by the first millennium BCE. This network became a vital artery for the exchange of luxury goods, including silk, spices, precious stones, and metals. The Silk Road not only facilitated the movement of goods, but also allowed for the flow of ideas, philosophies, and religions, most notably Buddhism, which spread from India to Central Asia and China. The importance of trade in cultural transmission cannot be overstated. Each merchant journey carried with it more than just physical goods. As traders moved across these routes, they brought with them new technologies, religious beliefs, and innovations that reshaped the civilizations they encountered. One of the most profound impacts of these early trade networks was the exchange of technologies. Metallurgy, which spread from the Near East to Europe and Asia, revolutionized societies, enabling the creation of more durable tools and weapons. The use of the wheel, which was first developed in Mesopotamia, spread across the ancient world, facilitating transport and improving the efficiency of trade. Similarly, the techniques for dyeing fabrics, the cultivation of crops like rice, and the art of glassmaking all moved through these networks, benefiting regions far beyond their place of origin. The spread of religion through these trade routes is another notable consequence. Alongside the exchange of material goods, ideas about spirituality and ethics were disseminated. The rise of Zoroastrianism, for instance, which originated in Persia, influenced not only neighboring regions, but also later Abrahamic religions. Christianity, too, spread along trade routes from its origins in the Roman Empire to parts of Europe, Asia, and Africa, facilitated by merchants, missionaries, and imperial authorities. Islam, emerging in the 7th century, similarly expanded along the routes of trade, reaching across the Middle East, North Africa, and into Spain and Central Asia. Thus, the first global trade networks were more than just conduits for economic exchange. They were channels for the movement of human culture, knowledge, and spiritual beliefs, shaping the ancient world in ways that reverberate to this day. Art has long been a central pillar of human civilization. serving as both a mirror and a medium for reflecting the complexities of society, religion, and power. In early civilizations, artistic expression transcended mere decoration or embellishment. It was deeply tied to the very fabric of cultural identity. Whether painted on the walls of caves or sculpted from stone, art was a powerful tool for communicating beliefs, ideals, and histories. The earliest forms of art can be found in the caves of Europe and Asia, where ancient humans created vivid paintings of animals, handprints, and geometric patterns. These paintings, often found in places like Lascaux in France or Altamira in Spain, were not just mere artistic endeavours, but held significant spiritual and ritualistic meaning. It is believed that these early cave paintings were a part of shamanistic practices, perhaps intended to invoke the spirits of the animals they depicted, ensuring successful hunts or offering a connection to the divine. In these ancient works, the line between the practical and the spiritual is blurred, with art serving as a bridge between the human and the supernatural. As societies began to settle and form more complex social structures, art evolved to reflect these changes. In ancient Mesopotamia, art was used to cement the divine right of kings and rulers. Monumental sculptures and reliefs were commissioned to showcase the power of kings like Sargon of Akkad or Hammurabi, with scenes of military conquests, religious devotion, and royal grandeur. The Code of Hammurabi, one of the earliest and most significant legal documents in history, was engraved in cuneiform script on a massive stone stele, reinforcing both the political and divine authority of the ruler. These artistic representations were not only for the glorification of the individual, but also for ensuring the perpetuation of order and hierarchy within society. In Egypt, art played an even more profound role, with a strong focus on the afterlife. The Egyptians believed in an eternal life after death, and much of their art was designed to ensure that the deceased were well prepared for their journey into the afterlife. Elaborate tombs, decorated with detailed scenes of daily life, gods, and divine judgment, were meant to accompany the dead into eternity. The creation of statues and elaborate wall paintings in tombs served to reinforce the continuity between life and death, with a strong emphasis on stability, order, and the divine right of pharaohs. As societies continued to develop, so too did their artistic expressions. In the Indus Valley, pottery and small figurines were created to represent gods, animals, and abstract symbols. These objects were not just utilitarian, but had deep symbolic meanings. The use of art in the daily lives of these early civilizations allowed for both a representation of the natural world and a direct expression of their understanding of the divine, the social order, and the cosmos. Art in early civilizations was more than aesthetic. It was a vital force in shaping how people viewed themselves, their rulers, and their gods. It was a way to communicate ideas that transcended the spoken word, leaving behind visual records that continue to shape our understanding of ancient cultures. Through art, early civilizations left their mark on history, expressing their most profound ideas and ideals for future generations to witness. The rise of writing marked one of the most transformative shifts in human history, bridging the gap between oral tradition and the structured, enduring records that would shape the future. In the earliest civilizations, the need for effective communication and record-keeping arose as societies became more complex. With agriculture, trade, and governance expanding, the ability to document events, transactions, and laws became essential. Writing provided a means to record the intricacies of daily life, transforming the way human beings interacted with each other, their rulers, and the divine. In Mesopotamia, around 3500 BCE, the first known form of writing emerged. Cuneiform, originally developed for the purpose of keeping track of goods and trade, It quickly expanded to document laws, religious texts, and historical records. The creation of the Code of Hammurabi in Babylon is a prime example of how writing solidified governmental control, recording laws that defined social order and justice. Similarly, the Egyptians developed hieroglyphs, a writing system that was closely tied to their religious practices. Writing became a way to preserve divine orders, royal decrees, and intricate genealogies, ensuring that future generations would understand the legacy and authority of their pharaohs. As writing systems spread, literacy became the cornerstone of administration. In ancient Egypt, scribes held significant power, tasked with recording everything from taxes to royal decrees. Their ability to read and write set them apart from the majority of the population, and their work in maintaining records laid the groundwork for bureaucratic governance. Similarly, the Sumerians in Mesopotamia created extensive archives that tracked everything from land ownership to religious practices. These records became critical not only for the functioning of government, but also for the preservation of culture and law. Libraries and archives began to emerge as the need for written documents grew. In Assyria, the Great Library of Ashurbanipal stood as a testament to the power of knowledge. It housed thousands of clay tablets containing not only royal decrees, but also literature, medical texts, and historical accounts. These early libraries were not just repositories of knowledge, but also centers for education and culture, where scribes and scholars could study the works of the past and ensure that knowledge was passed on to future generations. The spread of literacy and the development of record-keeping also had a profound impact on the economy. Writing facilitated trade by allowing merchants to keep track of transactions, debts, and goods. As societies began to use writing for economic purposes, it became essential for the growth of markets, the regulation of trade, and the collection of taxes. The ability to document contracts, loans, and business deals ensured that agreements were enforceable and that trade could be conducted across vast distances with a level of trust that had not been possible before. Ultimately, the rise of writing not only enhanced governance and economic growth, but also allowed societies to preserve their stories, beliefs, and knowledge. It helped elevate rulers, legitimize governments, and empowered individuals to leave their mark on history. Writing became the cornerstone of civilization, shaping everything from the legal systems to the development of culture, and allowing humanity to record its journey for generations to come. The birth of science and astronomy marked a pivotal moment in the evolution of human understanding, as ancient cultures began to look beyond the immediate world around them and seek to understand the vastness of the universe. Early scientific discoveries were driven by the practical needs of society, from agriculture to navigation, but over time, they evolved into more abstract inquiries into the nature of the cosmos. The study of stars, planets, and the heavens became intertwined with religion, culture, and the very structure of life itself. In ancient Mesopotamia, the Babylonians were among the first to systematically observe the night sky. Their keen interest in astronomy was not only driven by a desire to predict the cycles of the seasons, but also to make sense of the will of the gods. They developed an early form of astrology, linking the positions of celestial bodies with earthly events. By closely studying the movement of the stars and planets, the Babylonians created one of the earliest known lunar calendars, which allowed them to track time and regulate agricultural activities. They also divided the sky into constellations, providing the groundwork for much of modern star mapping. The Egyptians, on the other hand, were deeply connected to the stars, particularly those of the Orion constellation, which they associated with Osiris, the god of the afterlife. Their architectural marvels, such as the pyramids, were built with careful astronomical precision, aligned with the stars to honor the gods and ensure the pharaoh's successful passage to the afterlife. The Egyptians developed an intricate system of solar-based calendars, linking the annual flooding of the Nile with the heliacal rising of the star Sirius. This connection between celestial events and earthly life was crucial to the functioning of their society, helping them to manage their agricultural practices and organize religious ceremonies. As these early civilizations advanced in their study of the heavens, they also made remarkable strides in mathematics. The Babylonians, for instance, used a base 60 system, which was instrumental in their astronomical calculations. This system allowed them to divide the circle into 360 degrees, an idea that is still in use today. Similarly, the Egyptians developed a keen understanding of geometry, which they used not only for construction, but also to track the movement of the stars and the sun. Their knowledge of basic mathematical principles laid the foundation for future developments in science, enabling them to create accurate calendars and predict celestial events. In time, these early scientific endeavors laid the groundwork for more formalized studies in astronomy, mathematics, and the natural sciences. The meticulous records of the Babylonians, the mathematical innovations of the Egyptians, and their shared belief that the study of the heavens was essential to understanding the world around them, set the stage for future generations to further explore the mysteries of the universe. The birth of science and astronomy in these ancient cultures did not merely satisfy a curiosity about the stars. It fundamentally changed humanity's view of its place in the cosmos, sparking a journey of intellectual discovery that would continue for millennia. The creation of the first international laws marked a significant step in human history, as early civilizations recognized the need to formalize relations between different nations and city-states. As empires expanded and trade networks grew, the interactions between people of different cultures became more frequent, leading to the need for rules and agreements that governed these exchanges. Diplomacy, once a practice of personal negotiation and ad hoc solutions, began to evolve into more systematic and formalized methods. In Mesopotamia, one of the earliest recorded examples of an international agreement comes from the reign of King Hammurabi of Babylon. His famous Code of Laws, which governed not only his kingdom, but also interactions with surrounding territories, was a reflection of the growing complexity of early diplomacy. The code laid the groundwork for legal frameworks that would extend beyond a single ruler's dominion, influencing neighboring city-states and creating a semblance of order in a world where might often determined right. Hammurabi's approach was pioneering in that it established the idea of laws that could be applied universally, or at least across a network of interconnected states, rather than laws based on the whims of individual rulers. The practice of forming treaties between different city-states and kingdoms soon followed. The ancient Egyptians, for example, developed diplomatic practices that helped them secure their borders and maintain peaceful relations with neighboring powers. One of the most famous early treaties was the peace agreement between Egypt and the Hittite Empire, concluded after the Battle of Kadesh in 1274 BCE. This treaty, signed by Pharaoh Ramses II and Hittite king Hattusili III, was one of the earliest examples of a peace agreement that included provisions for mutual defense and established formal diplomatic relations between the two powers. The treaty was not merely a temporary truce. It was a long-term arrangement that included specific obligations and penalties for violation, laying the foundations for modern international law. These early treaties and legal agreements often focused on matters of trade, security, and territorial boundaries. They were typically negotiated by diplomats, who acted as intermediaries between their rulers and those of foreign lands. These early diplomats had to navigate not only the political landscapes of their own kingdoms, but also the intricate web of alliances, rivalries, and interests that shaped the ancient world. With the signing of treaties, empires sought to legitimize their power, ensuring that their rights to trade, land, and military assistance were recognized and protected by law. As the centuries passed, the concept of international law expanded. In addition to treaties, city-states and kingdoms began to develop a broader understanding of diplomatic immunity and the rights of foreign emissaries. The establishment of such norms helped create a more structured international system, where the rule of law began to take precedence over unchecked power. These early agreements laid the foundation for what would later become formal international relations, influencing the way nations interact with each other to this day. The legacy of these first international laws remains a testament to the enduring human drive for peace, order, and mutual respect across borders. Trade has always played a pivotal role in the development and growth of civilizations. As ancient societies began to establish trade routes, they not only exchanged goods but also shared ideas, technologies, and cultural practices, which ultimately led to the blending of different ways of life. The flow of resources and knowledge helped shape the ancient world, fostering interconnectedness between distant regions. Major trade centers, such as Mesopotamia and the Indus Valley, became vital hubs of commerce and cultural exchange, each contributing uniquely to the broader human experience. Mesopotamia, often referred to as the cradle of civilization, was one of the earliest regions to witness the rise of extensive trade networks. Located between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, it served as a natural crossroads for traders traveling between Asia, Africa, and Europe. Sumerians, Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians, who inhabited Mesopotamia, developed a sophisticated trading system that extended to Egypt, the Indus Valley, Anatolia, and the Arabian Peninsula. Goods such as textiles, grains, and luxury items like lapis lazuli and silver flowed in and out of Mesopotamia. But the true value of this exchange went beyond material goods. With each shipment of goods, new technologies, ideas, and cultural practices made their way into Mesopotamian society. The introduction of the wheel and advancements in metallurgy, for example, had far-reaching consequences for human development, transforming not only transportation and warfare, but also the way societies organized their economies. Similarly, the Indus Valley, with its advanced urban planning and trade networks, played an integral role in connecting civilizations across the ancient world. The cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro were major trade hubs, with links to Mesopotamia, Persia, and Central Asia. Archaeological evidence shows that the Indus Valley traded valuable goods such as cotton, beads, and pottery, while receiving items like metals and precious stones. The shared trade routes also allowed for the spread of innovations such as irrigation techniques, which revolutionized agriculture in many regions. As these cities interacted with neighboring civilizations, cultural exchange flourished. The art and architecture of the Indus Valley, characterized by well-planned cities and intricate beadwork, influenced surrounding regions, just as their traders brought back new ideas and artistic styles from afar. Trade not only facilitated the exchange of physical goods, but also ideas. The spread of writing systems, for example, was closely tied to trade. As merchants and diplomats from various regions interacted, they brought with them the symbols and language systems they used to record transactions. This exchange eventually led to the creation of shared systems of writing, including cuneiform in Mesopotamia and hieroglyphs in Egypt. These writing systems allowed for the documentation of knowledge, legal agreements, and cultural traditions, laying the groundwork for the preservation of history. The movement of people through trade routes also contributed to the spread of religions and philosophical ideas. As cultures exchanged goods, they also exchanged spiritual beliefs. Mesopotamian gods, Egyptian religious practices, and the philosophies of the Indus Valley began to shape one another. The Silk Road, which emerged centuries later, would continue this legacy, further expanding the exchange of goods, ideas, and religious thought across vast distances. The growth of trade and cultural exchange thus helped to shape the course of human history, fostering connections between disparate cultures that would ultimately form the foundation for the world as we know it today. The decline of the first great civilizations is a tale woven from a complex interplay of internal strife, external pressures, and environmental challenges. Civilizations such as Sumer, the Indus Valley, and ancient Egypt reached monumental heights, but like all empires, they faced inevitable struggles that ultimately led to their downfall. Each civilization's collapse tells a different story, yet they share common themes of warfare, environmental degradation, and social unrest that signaled the end of their dominance. Sumer, one of the earliest civilizations in Mesopotamia, is often considered the cradle of writing, urbanization, and governance. The Sumerians built powerful city-states, such as Ur and Uruk, that dominated the region for centuries. However, by the end of the 3rd millennium BCE, Sumer faced mounting challenges. Constant warfare between city-states weakened the political structure, while environmental factors played a critical role. The overuse of irrigation systems led to soil salinization, which diminished agricultural productivity. This, combined with invasions from external forces such as the Akkadians, contributed to the downfall of Sumerian civilization. By around 2000 BCE, the once thriving city-states had crumbled, and Sumer was absorbed by other rising powers in the region. Similarly, the Indus Valley civilization, known for its advanced urban planning and sophisticated trade networks, saw its cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa flourish for hundreds of years. However, by around 1900 BCE, these cities were abandoned, and the reasons for their collapse remain a subject of debate. One prominent theory points to climate change. Evidence suggests that the region experienced a significant shift in the monsoon patterns, leading to droughts and the drying up of rivers that were essential for irrigation. With agriculture becoming less sustainable, the Indus Valley people may have faced food shortages, which would have exacerbated social tensions and migration. Additionally, the weakening of centralized governance due to internal disarray may have left the civilization vulnerable to invasion or internal collapse. The combination of environmental factors and possible social upheaval led to the decline of the Indus Valley civilization, leaving behind only remnants of its once great cities. In ancient Egypt, one of the longest-lasting civilizations in history, the fall was not immediate, but rather a gradual process. Egypt's collapse is often linked to a series of weak pharaohs and internal power struggles, exacerbated by external invasions. During the New Kingdom, Egypt was at its peak, with vast territories and a thriving economy. However, the kingdom's internal divisions, particularly after the reign of Ramses II, weakened its structure. The late period of Egypt saw frequent invasions from the Libyans, Nubians, and eventually the Assyrians and Persians. These invasions, coupled with the internal corruption of the ruling elite, eroded Egypt's power. Over time, Egypt became a vassal state under foreign rule, with its once mighty influence slowly fading into history. The fall of these early civilizations underscores the vulnerability of even the most powerful empires. While warfare, environmental shifts, and social unrest were significant factors. The collapse of these societies also serves as a reminder of the delicate balance required for survival. Resources can only be stretched so far, and without the ability to adapt, even the mightiest civilizations can fall. The legacy of these early civilizations, however, persists in the cultural and technological advancements they left behind, which continue to shape the world today. The collapse of earlier civilizations did not mark the end of human progress. Rather, it paved the way for the rise of new cultures that would carry forward the legacies of their predecessors while leaving their own indelible marks on history. Among these civilizations, the Phoenicians and the Hebrews played crucial roles in shaping the course of the ancient world, taking inspiration from the ruins of previous societies while adapting to their own challenges and circumstances. The Phoenicians, a maritime people from the coastal cities of modern-day Lebanon, rose to prominence after the decline of the great Mesopotamian and Egyptian empires. Unlike their predecessors, who were often tied to the land, the Phoenicians excelled in trade and navigation. Their cities, including Tyre, Sidon, and Byblos, became bustling hubs of commerce, linking the Mediterranean world from Egypt to Greece and beyond. They inherited the sophisticated writing systems of earlier cultures, particularly the cuneiform script of Mesopotamia, but they adapted and refined it, creating one of the first alphabetic systems. This innovation in writing had a profound impact on communication, making written language more accessible and paving the way for future literary traditions. Phoenician trade networks spanned vast distances, with merchants exchanging goods such as timber, glass, and purple dye, a product highly prized in the ancient world. The Phoenicians' seafaring expertise allowed them to establish colonies across the Mediterranean, including the famous city of Carthage in North Africa, which would later rise to become a formidable power in its own right. Through their maritime prowess and their contributions to trade and writing, the Phoenicians ensured that the cultural exchange between diverse peoples flourished, preserving the legacy of ancient civilizations, while simultaneously contributing to the development of a new world order. At the same time, the Hebrews, or Israelites, emerged as a distinct civilization with deep roots in the ancient Near East. While their early history was marked by periods of migration, conquest, and exile, the Hebrews developed a unique cultural and religious identity that would influence not only the ancient world, but also the course of future history. The Hebrews, like the Phoenicians, inherited the cultural and technological achievements of earlier civilizations, such as agriculture, architecture, and trade. However, they also developed a monotheistic religion that set them apart from the polytheistic societies around them. This faith, centered around the worship of one God, formed the core of Hebrew society and would later shape the moral and ethical frameworks of Western civilization. The Hebrews also carried forward the tradition of writing, preserving their religious texts and history through sacred scripture. The Hebrew Bible, or Old Testament, contains the stories, laws, and teachings that would not only inform Jewish culture, but also become foundational to both Christianity and Islam in the centuries to come. Though the Hebrews faced numerous challenges, including exile and foreign domination, their resilience and commitment to their beliefs allowed them to thrive and influence the broader world long after their initial rise. The Phoenicians and the Hebrews, each in their own way, represent the resilience of human civilization in the face of collapse. They carried forward the lessons and achievements of their predecessors, forging new paths in trade, writing, religion, and culture that would shape the future of the ancient world and beyond. Through their enduring legacies, these civilizations remind us that, even in the face of destruction, human creativity, adaptation, and perseverance can pave the way for the next great chapter of history. The birth of monotheistic religions marked a profound shift in the way humans understood their relationship with the divine and their place in the world. Unlike the polytheistic traditions that had dominated ancient societies, which believed in many gods overseeing different aspects of life, monotheism introduced the concept of one singular, all-powerful deity who governed all things. This revolutionary idea not only altered the spiritual landscapes of the regions where it took root, but also had far-reaching consequences for social, political, and cultural structures. Zoroastrianism, one of the earliest monotheistic religions, emerged in ancient Persia around the 6th century BCE, founded by the prophet Zoroaster. This faith centered on the worship of Ahura Mazda, the supreme god of light and truth. Zoroastrianism taught that the world was a battleground between the forces of good, led by Ahura Mazda, and the forces of evil, led by Angra Mainyu. This dualistic view of the world's moral struggle profoundly influenced the development of later monotheistic thought, including the concepts of judgment, the afterlife, and the eventual triumph of good. The religion became the state religion of Persia, with its beliefs not only shaping the spiritual life of the people, but also guiding their governance and laws. The Persian kings, seen as earthly representatives of Ahura Mazda, wielded their power in the name of divine authority, reflecting the intimate connection between religion and politics in the ancient world. In parallel, the Hebrews were developing their own monotheistic traditions, which would have an even more lasting impact on the world. Emerging from their experiences as a small, often oppressed people in the ancient Near East, the Hebrews began to articulate a belief in Yahweh, the one true God, who was not just a deity among many, but the creator and ruler of the entire universe. This belief became central to the Jewish identity, distinguishing them from the surrounding polytheistic cultures. The Hebrew scriptures, which chronicled their covenant with Yahweh, reinforced the idea that their relationship with God was a contractual one, marked by moral laws and commandments that had to be followed to secure God's favor. This was a radical departure from the idea that gods were simply to be appeased or worshipped for favors. Instead, the Jewish faith emphasized righteousness, justice, and the moral responsibility of every individual within society. As Judaism took root in Israel and Judah, its monotheistic principles began to shape not only religious practices, but also the political and social structures of these early Jewish kingdoms. The idea that a single, all-powerful God governed both the natural world and human affairs provided a foundation for laws and governance. Kings ruled under the divine authority of Yahweh, and the Israelites were considered a chosen people with a unique responsibility to live according to God's laws. The rise of these monotheistic religions, Zoroastrianism, Judaism, and eventually Christianity, helped lay the foundation for a new understanding of society and governance. These religions emphasized the moral and ethical responsibilities of individuals, the importance of justice, and the belief that human beings were accountable to a higher power. As these ideas spread and evolved, they not only reshaped religious thought, but also influenced political philosophies, social justice movements, and the development of Western and Middle Eastern civilizations. Monotheism's legacy would continue to grow, influencing the development of other religions, including Christianity and Islam, and altering the course of history for centuries to come. Trade has always been a powerful engine for the exchange of goods, but its role in the diffusion of culture, religion, and technology is equally significant. As ancient civilizations grew and established extensive trade routes, they opened doors to the transmission of ideas and innovations across vast distances. One of the most iconic examples of this cultural exchange is the Silk Road, which connected the East and West, enabling not only the movement of valuable commodities such as silk, spices, and precious metals, but also the flow of artistic styles, religious beliefs, and technological advances that would leave a lasting imprint on both sides of the world. The Silk Road, which spanned thousands of miles from China to the Mediterranean, was not just a route for merchants, it was a pathway for the exchange of cultural and intellectual wealth. Along with the physical goods traded, ideas moved with equal speed. Buddhism, for instance, journeyed from India to Central Asia, China, and eventually Southeast Asia through these routes. As merchants and pilgrims travelled along the Silk Road, they shared their religious beliefs, leading to the spread of Buddhism across much of Asia. Similarly, the influence of Chinese inventions, such as papermaking, printing, and gunpowder, reached the Middle East and Europe through these networks. The transfer of technology not only changed military strategies and communications, but also transformed the way knowledge was preserved and disseminated across civilizations. The Mediterranean trade routes, which had been active for centuries before the rise of the Silk Road, also played a crucial role in cultural diffusion. The ancient civilizations of the Mediterranean, such as the Greeks, Romans, and Egyptians, traded goods across a network of sea routes, linking regions as far apart as Britain and Egypt. These routes facilitated the exchange of ideas, from Greek philosophy to Roman engineering techniques, which would later influence European thought during the Renaissance. The spread of the alphabet from Phoenicia to Greece and then to the rest of Europe is another example of how trade routes carried not only goods, but also innovations that shaped the development of written languages. In addition to religion and technology, art and architecture were also spread through these trade routes. The exchange of artistic techniques, such as the Roman adaptation of Greek sculpture or the blending of Persian and Indian styles, led to the creation of new forms of art that reflected a synthesis of different cultures. Similarly, architectural styles, including the use of arches and domes, spread across regions, influencing the development of monumental structures from the Roman Empire to Islamic architecture. The role of trade in cultural diffusion was not limited to the transfer of knowledge and technology. It also fostered a greater understanding and appreciation of different cultures. As people from diverse backgrounds met along trade routes, they exchanged not only goods but also customs, stories, and traditions, enriching the cultural fabric of societies. The blending of these ideas contributed to the creation of hybrid cultures, where different philosophies, religious practices, and artistic expressions coexisted and flourished. In this way, trade became not just a means of economic exchange, but a vital force in shaping the global cultural landscape. Greek philosophy stands as one of the most significant pillars in the development of Western civilization. Emerging in the 6th century BCE, it fundamentally altered the way humans thought about existence, knowledge, and the nature of society. Prior to this, mythological explanations dominated the understanding of the world. However, Greek philosophers, beginning with figures like Thales, sought to explain the universe through reason and observation, laying the foundation for a new intellectual tradition that would shape Western thought for centuries. At the heart of Greek philosophy was the idea that knowledge could be obtained not through divine revelation or myth, but through human reason. This shift marked the birth of rational thought, and the works of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle are often viewed as the pinnacle of this tradition. Socrates, with his unique method of questioning, helped to push the boundaries of philosophical inquiry. His dialectical approach, known as the Socratic method, was based on asking probing questions to stimulate critical thinking and illuminate ideas. He emphasized the importance of ethics and virtue, urging individuals to examine their lives and seek moral understanding. His assertion that the unexamined life is not worth living became a guiding principle for many future philosophers and thinkers. Plato, a student of Socrates, took these ideas further and formed a system of thought that would deeply influence both philosophy and political theory. His concept of the ideal state, as presented in the Republic, proposed a society governed by philosopher kings, individuals who ruled not for personal gain, but based on knowledge and wisdom. Plato's ideas on justice, the nature of the soul, and the concept of forms eternal and unchanging ideals challenged conventional thinking and set the stage for a deeper exploration of metaphysics and ethics. Plato's Academy, established in Athens, became the center for philosophical learning, and his ideas influenced generations of philosophers, both in the ancient world and beyond. Aristotle, Plato's student, contributed to an even broader range of disciplines, including logic, ethics, politics, and natural sciences. Aristotle's system of formal logic, particularly his development of syllogism, provided the foundation for deductive reasoning, which became central to Western scientific thought. In his Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle argued that happiness was the highest good and could be achieved through virtue and the practice of moderation, a concept known as the golden mean. His ideas on governance, particularly in works like Politics, emphasized the importance of the polis, or city-state, and the role of citizens in the political process. Aristotle's method of empirical observation and classification also influenced the development of the natural sciences, as he made significant contributions to biology, physics, and cosmology. The legacy of Greek philosophy permeates Western civilization, affecting not only philosophy and ethics, but also the realms of politics, science, and education. The exploration of human nature, the pursuit of knowledge, and the quest for virtue that these philosophers championed continue to resonate in contemporary thought. The influence of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle extends beyond their own era, shaping the intellectual landscape of the Renaissance and continuing to inspire modern philosophical inquiry. Through their writings and ideas, Greek philosophy helped to lay the intellectual groundwork for Western civilization, encouraging future generations to pursue wisdom, seek truth, and understand the world through reason. Roman law stands as one of the most enduring legacies of the ancient world, deeply influencing the development of legal systems in Western civilization. Emerging from the Roman Republic and flourishing during the Empire, Roman law was designed not only to govern a vast and diverse empire, but also to create a sense of order and justice that extended to all its subjects. Its principles laid the groundwork for modern legal frameworks, impacting everything from civil rights to property law, and its core concepts still echo through today's legal institutions. The Romans developed a sophisticated legal system that emphasized the rights of individuals and the rule of law, marking a shift from earlier systems of arbitrary rule. One of the foundational aspects of Roman law was the idea of jus civile, the law of the citizens, which governed relations between Roman citizens and established legal procedures for resolving disputes. The Roman legal system also included jus gentium, or the law of nations, which applied to foreigners and served as a precursor to international law. This focus on a universal set of legal principles helped to create a more cohesive and just society, even as the Roman Empire expanded to encompass a diverse array of peoples, cultures, and legal traditions. One of the most significant contributions of Roman law was the codification of legal principles. The 12 Tables, created in the mid-5th century BCE, represented the earliest attempt to systematize laws and make them publicly accessible. Though rudimentary by today's standards, they marked an important step in creating a written body of law that could be applied uniformly. As the Roman Empire grew, the need for more detailed and complex legal codes became evident, and Roman law evolved into a vast body of legal knowledge, encapsulated in texts like the Corpus Juris Civilis under Emperor Justinian in the 6th century CE. This collection of laws became the foundation for much of modern civil law. Roman law also introduced key legal concepts that continue to shape modern legal systems. The notion of legal personhood, where individuals, corporations, and even the state itself were treated as entities with rights and obligations, was central to Roman thought. Roman law recognized the concept of property rights, contracts, and inheritance, and its procedures for trial, defense, and punishment laid the foundation for today's judicial systems. Legal concepts, such as stare decisis, the doctrine that courts should follow precedents, and the presumption of innocence, are rooted in Roman traditions, demonstrating the lasting impact of their legal philosophy. Beyond the law itself, Roman institutions helped shape governance and citizenship. Roman law was not merely a set of rules. It was intertwined with the political and social fabric of Roman life. The idea of civitas, or citizenship, was central to Roman identity, and the legal rights granted to citizens such as the right to vote, the right to own property, and the right to stand trial formed the foundation of modern democratic and civic structures. The Roman approach to governance, with its checks and balances between different branches of government and the role of the Senate, laid the groundwork for the development of republicanism and constitutional law in later Western history. In conclusion, the influence of Roman law is profound and enduring, shaping the legal systems of many countries across the world. The principles of Roman law, with its focus on justice, rights, and the rule of law, continue to guide modern legal thought and institutions. From the creation of legal frameworks to the establishment of governance systems, Roman law's legacy remains a cornerstone of contemporary legal practice and democratic governance. The spread of Christianity and Islam, two of the world's most influential religions, transformed vast regions of the world, shaping cultures, societies, and political landscapes for centuries. Christianity, which began as a small movement within the Roman Empire, would eventually become the dominant faith across Europe, while Islam, emerging in the 7th century in the Arabian Peninsula, would grow to encompass a vast area stretching from the Middle East to Africa and beyond. Christianity's spread within the Roman Empire began in the 1st century CE, following the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. Initially, the early Christians were a persecuted minority, often facing hostility from both Roman authorities and the Jewish religious establishment. However, the teachings of Jesus, centered on love, forgiveness, and salvation, resonated with many, and Christianity began to attract followers from all walks of life, including the poor and marginalized. Over time, the Apostle Paul's missionary journeys, along with the establishment of Christian communities throughout the empire, played a pivotal role in spreading the faith across vast regions, from Judea to Rome itself. Despite initial persecution, Christianity found a foothold in cities across the empire, where it offered a message of hope and a sense of community. The conversion of Emperor Constantine to Christianity in the early 4th century CE marked a pivotal moment in the religion's history. Constantine's Edict of Milan in 313 CE legalized Christianity, granting it the status of a recognized religion within the empire. This official endorsement allowed the faith to flourish openly, and by the end of the 4th century, Emperor Theodosius declared Christianity the state religion of the Roman Empire. The spread of Christianity continued throughout Europe, especially during the Middle Ages, as monastic orders, missionaries, and kings embraced the faith. The Catholic Church became a central institution in medieval Europe, wielding significant influence over both spiritual and temporal matters. The rise of Islam in the 7th century CE, under the leadership of the Prophet Muhammad, marked another profound shift in world history. Islam emerged in the Arabian Peninsula, where Muhammad's revelations, believed to be the word of God, formed the basis of the Quran. Muhammad's message, which called for the worship of one God, Allah, social justice, and the unity of the Arab tribes, quickly gained followers. After Muhammad's death in 632 CE, the spread of Islam was propelled by the caliphates, beginning with the Rashidun Caliphate, which rapidly expanded the Islamic Empire through conquest, trade, and missionary work. Within a century, Islam had spread across the Middle East, North Africa, and parts of Spain and Central Asia. Islam's spread was not only through military conquest, but also through cultural exchange. The Islamic world became a center of learning and commerce, where scholars made significant contributions to mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy. The spread of Islamic culture and the Arabic language deeply influenced the regions it touched. From the architecture of mosques to the use of Arabic as the language of science and scholarship, both Christianity and Islam, while originating in different regions and cultural contexts, shared common elements, including the belief in one God and the importance of community and moral conduct. The spread of these religions reshaped the world, influencing politics, art, philosophy, and social structures. Christianity's establishment as the state religion of the Roman Empire and Islam's rapid expansion under the caliphates left lasting legacies in the history of civilization, shaping the modern world in profound ways. The Islamic Golden Age, which spanned from the 8th to the 14th centuries, was a period of remarkable scientific, cultural, and intellectual flourishing in the Islamic world. It was during this time that the vast empire of the caliphates, stretching from Spain to India, became a hub of knowledge and innovation. The intellectual achievements of this era would lay the foundation for many of the advancements that shaped the future of the Western and Eastern worlds. One of the central features of the Islamic Golden Age was the focus on learning and scholarship. The caliphates established institutions known as House of Wisdom in cities such as Baghdad, where scholars from diverse backgrounds, Muslims, Christians, Jews, and others gathered to translate, study, and expand upon the works of ancient civilizations. Greek texts on philosophy, mathematics, and medicine were translated into Arabic, preserved, and further developed. This preservation of knowledge was instrumental in the survival of classical learning, much of which would have been lost to history otherwise. In the fields of mathematics and astronomy, the contributions were profound. Muslim scholars such as Al-Khwarizmi, often referred to as the father of algebra, revolutionized mathematics with his work on equations, algorithms, and the decimal positional number system. His contributions provided the foundation for later developments in both Europe and the Islamic world. Meanwhile, astronomers such as al-Battani made significant advancements in the study of the stars and planetary movements. They improved upon the ancient Greek astronomical models and developed more accurate methods of measuring time and predicting celestial events, using instruments like the astrolabe. Medicine also saw remarkable progress during this period. Physicians like Ibn Sina, Avicenna, wrote comprehensive medical texts such as the Canon of Medicine, which became one of the most influential works in both the Islamic world and Europe for centuries. His detailed understanding of anatomy, surgery, and the use of pharmaceuticals revolutionized the practice of medicine, and his work on contagious diseases laid the groundwork for later epidemiological studies. Scholars like Al-Razi made significant strides in the study of chemistry and the practice of medicine, developing treatments for various diseases and inventing tools still used in modern medicine. Philosophy and the arts also thrived, as thinkers in the Islamic world engaged deeply with both Islamic teachings and ancient Greek philosophy. Philosophers like Al-Farabi and Averroes Ibn Rushd helped reconcile Aristotelian logic with Islamic theology, influencing not only Islamic thought, but also European Renaissance thinkers. The arts, including calligraphy, architecture, and poetry, reached new heights of sophistication. The intricate designs of mosques and palaces, adorned with geometric patterns and arabesques, continue to serve as symbols of Islamic artistic achievement. The golden age of the Islamic caliphates was a testament to the transformative power of knowledge, collaboration, and intellectual pursuit. It not only preserved and advanced the scientific and philosophical traditions of the ancient world, but also paved the way for the later developments in the Renaissance and the Enlightenment. This era of cultural and scientific brilliance remains a crucial chapter in the shared history of human civilization. The Byzantine Empire emerged from the ashes of the Roman Empire, serving as its eastern continuation after the fall of Rome in the 5th century. Centered around the city of Constantinople, formerly Byzantium, the Byzantine Empire became a bastion of Greek and Roman traditions, retaining much of the ancient empire's structure, governance, and cultural achievements. While the western part of the Roman Empire crumbled under pressure from invading tribes, the Byzantine Empire thrived for nearly 1,000 years, preserving classical knowledge, developing Christian theology, and influencing the course of history. The Byzantine Empire reached its peak under Emperor Justinian I in the 6th century, who sought to reconquer the lost western territories of the Roman Empire. His efforts resulted in the temporary restoration of Roman rule over parts of North Africa, Italy, and Spain. During his reign, Justinian also enacted the Corpus Juris Civilis, a legal code that would become the foundation for much of Western law. The Byzantine Empire, however, was not just a military and political entity, it was also a center of art, culture, and religion. The construction of the Hagia Sophia, an architectural marvel, symbolized the empire's spiritual and artistic grandeur. Constantinople itself became a cultural and intellectual hub, attracting scholars, theologians, and artists from all over the Christian world. Despite its early successes, the Byzantine Empire faced continual challenges. Internal strife, military defeats, and external threats from the Persians, Arabs, and later the Seljuk Turks and Crusaders weakened the empire's territorial holdings. The rise of Islam in the 7th century marked the beginning of significant territorial losses, with much of the empire's eastern provinces falling to Arab forces. The Byzantine Empire's military strength was often tested by invasions from the north, particularly by the Slavs and later the Ottomans, who would play a decisive role in the empire's downfall. The empire's political and military decline culminated in 1204, when the Fourth Crusade, originally aimed at reclaiming Jerusalem from Muslim control, turned its attention to Constantinople. The Crusaders sacked the city, leading to the temporary establishment of the Latin Empire in the heart of Byzantium. Though the Byzantines managed to regain Constantinople in 1261, the empire was irreparably weakened, unable to recover its former glory. By the 15th century, the Byzantine Empire had been reduced to little more than a few territories surrounding Constantinople. In 1453, the Ottoman Turks, under Sultan Mehmed II, finally captured Constantinople after a prolonged siege, marking the end of the Byzantine Empire. The fall of Constantinople sent shockwaves throughout Europe, marking the definitive end of the Roman legacy in the East. However, the Byzantine Empire's cultural and intellectual legacy endured. The preservation of ancient Greek and Roman texts, the development of Christian theology, and the continuation of Roman law deeply influenced the Renaissance in Western Europe. Even after its fall, the Byzantine Empire left an indelible mark on world history, shaping the development of Europe, the Eastern Mediterranean, and the Orthodox Christian world. The Middle Ages, often considered the period between the fall of the Roman Empire and the beginning of the Renaissance, marked a time of profound transformation in Europe. Following the collapse of Rome, Europe descended into political fragmentation and instability. The once vast Roman Empire was divided into various barbarian kingdoms, which struggled to maintain control over the region. Amid this chaos, feudalism emerged as the dominant social and political system, providing a structure for governance in the absence of centralized authority. Feudalism was a hierarchical system where land was exchanged for military service and loyalty. At the top of the social pyramid were kings and lords, who granted land to vassals in exchange for soldiers and support. Below them were the peasants and serfs, who worked the land and provided food for the kingdom in return for protection. This rigid social structure shaped nearly every aspect of medieval life, determining not only one's role in society, but also their economic and legal rights. The local manor, a self-sustaining unit, became the centre of life for the majority of people during this period. At the same time, the Catholic Church played a defining role in shaping the culture, politics, and day-to-day life of medieval Europe. The Church was more than just a religious institution. It was a political and cultural force, exerting influence over kings and commoners alike. With the collapse of centralized power after the fall of Rome, the Church became a unifying force, providing stability and continuity. It played a key role in preserving knowledge through the Dark Ages, with monks in monasteries acting as the keepers of learning, transcribing ancient texts, and maintaining libraries. Religious faith deeply permeated medieval society. The Catholic Church not only governed spiritual matters, but also had significant control over education, legal systems, and morality. Popes wielded immense power, often influencing political decisions and even declaring kings excommunicated if they disagreed with the Church's teachings or authority. Christianity became a central aspect of European identity, uniting people across different kingdoms under a shared set of beliefs. This religious unity helped maintain order in a fragmented society and gave rise to the construction of great cathedrals and churches that became symbols of faith and artistic achievement. During this time, the idea of chivalry also took root, shaping the roles of knights and warriors. Knighthood was intertwined with the concept of service to God and the protection of the weak. The idealized image of the knight, bound by honor and duty, influenced both military tactics and social interactions. The idea of chivalry would later inspire literature, from the tales of King Arthur to the epic poems of the time, reflecting the values of loyalty, bravery, and devotion to both God and country. The Middle Ages set the stage for the emergence of modern Europe as kingdoms and empires gradually consolidated power and wealth. The foundations for trade, governance, and culture were laid. Over time, the medieval period would give way to the Renaissance, but the enduring influence of feudalism, the Church, and the knightly code would leave an indelible mark on European civilization. The Renaissance, a period that spanned roughly from the 14th to the 17th century, marked the resurgence of classical knowledge and a profound transformation in European intellectual and cultural life. This era, which began in Italy, witnessed a rediscovery of ancient Greek and Roman texts, long buried under centuries of medieval scholasticism. Scholars, fueled by the growing sense of human potential and achievement, sought to revive the lost knowledge of the classical world. With the fall of Constantinople in 1453, many Greek scholars fled to Italy, bringing with them precious manuscripts that rekindled interest in the philosophy, science, and art of antiquity. This sparked a period of intellectual fervour, known as the Humanist movement, which placed a strong emphasis on the study of ancient texts, languages, and cultures. One of the most significant contributions of Renaissance thinkers was the emphasis on the individual and the potential for human achievement. Figures like Petrarch, Erasmus, and Giovanni Boccaccio championed the study of classical works, believing that they held the keys to understanding human nature and achieving greatness. This shift in thinking gave rise to a new focus on secular subjects, moving away from the purely religious concerns that had dominated the medieval period. Philosophy, science, and literature flourished as scholars and artists sought to apply the principles of ancient thought to contemporary life. At the same time, the Renaissance witnessed a dramatic flourishing of art. Artists like Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, Raphael, and Titian redefined the concept of beauty, drawing inspiration from classical ideals of proportion, symmetry, and human form. The use of perspective in painting, pioneered by artists like Brunelleschi and Masaccio, transformed the way space was represented on a two-dimensional surface, creating a sense of depth and realism that had never been seen before. Michelangelo's sculptures, such as his iconic David and the frescoes of the Sistine Chapel, exemplified the Renaissance mastery of form, light, and human anatomy. The impact of the Renaissance extended beyond the realm of art and philosophy. It also influenced the development of Western science. Figures like Nicolaus Copernicus, Galileo Galilei, and Johannes Kepler challenged the medieval worldview, proposing new models of the universe based on observation and reason. This scientific revolution, inspired in part by the renewed interest in classical texts, laid the groundwork for modern astronomy, physics, and the scientific method. The Renaissance also had far-reaching effects on literature and politics. Writers such as Dante Alighieri, Geoffrey Chaucer, and Niccolo Machiavelli explored the complexities of human nature, morality, and governance, influencing both European literature and political thought for centuries to come. Machiavelli's The Prince, for example, offered a pragmatic and sometimes ruthless approach to political power, reflecting the changing dynamics of European states. In essence, the Renaissance was a rebirth of classical knowledge that transformed nearly every aspect of Western culture. Its influence extended beyond the borders of Italy, inspiring movements across Europe and leaving an indelible mark on art, science, literature, and philosophy. The Renaissance was not just a revival of the past, but the foundation upon which the modern world would be built. The Age of Exploration, which unfolded from the late 15th century to the early 17th century, was a transformative period that reshaped the world. Driven by a mix of curiosity, economic ambition, and a desire for new trade routes, European explorers embarked on journeys that would connect distant lands, ignite cultural exchanges, and establish global networks that continue to influence the world today. At the heart of this era was the quest for new trade routes, particularly to Asia. The traditional overland routes to the east had become increasingly difficult to navigate due to the rise of the Ottoman Empire, which controlled much of the trade between Europe and Asia. Seeking alternative paths to the wealth of the East, European nations turned to the sea. Portugal and Spain led the way, investing heavily in maritime technology and navigation skills. In 1492, Christopher Columbus, under the Spanish crown, famously set sail westward across the Atlantic, aiming to find a new route to Asia. Instead, he stumbled upon the islands of the Caribbean, a discovery that would set in motion the European colonization of the Americas. Meanwhile, Vasco da Gama, a Portuguese explorer, successfully navigated around the southern tip of Africa, reaching India in 1498. His pioneering voyage opened up sea-based trade routes between Europe and the Indian subcontinent, allowing Portugal to establish lucrative trading posts and colonies along the African and Indian coasts. His success spurred further exploration and competition between European powers for dominance in the new global trading system. Ferdinand Magellan, a Portuguese navigator sailing under the Spanish flag, sought to continue the quest for new routes by attempting to circumnavigate the globe. Although Magellan did not survive the journey, his expedition, completed by his crew in 1522, proved that the Earth could be circumnavigated by sea, challenging conventional understanding of the world's geography. This voyage, more than any other, symbolized the interconnectedness that was beginning to take shape across oceans, bringing distant continents closer together than ever before. The age of exploration also had profound impacts on the Americas. Following Columbus's initial voyage, Spain and Portugal established vast colonial empires across the New World. Spain, in particular, became a dominant force in the Americas, extracting vast wealth from its colonies in gold, silver, and agricultural products. This led to the rise of European powers in the Western Hemisphere and the displacement of indigenous populations through conquest, disease, and colonization. The Columbian Exchange, a term used to describe the transfer of plants, animals, culture, and ideas between the Old and New Worlds, was a direct result of these explorations. Crops like potatoes, maize, and tobacco travelled from the Americas to Europe, while horses, cattle, and wheat made their way to the New World. The age of exploration reshaped not only the physical world, but also the way people saw themselves and their place within it. It expanded horizons, deepened economic and cultural ties between continents, and set the stage for the globalized world that we inhabit today. However, it also sowed the seeds of colonialism, exploitation, and conflict, consequences that would continue to reverberate through history long after the Age of Discovery had ended. The scientific revolution, which spanned the 16th and 17th centuries, was a period of profound transformation that reshaped humanity's understanding of the natural world. It marked a shift from medieval beliefs, rooted in religious doctrine and classical thought, to a new era of empirical inquiry, reason, and observation. The figures who defined this revolution, Nicolaus Copernicus, Galileo Galilei, Johannes Kepler, and Isaac Newton, challenged the established worldview and laid the foundations for modern science. At the heart of the scientific revolution was the challenge to the geocentric model of the universe, which held that the Earth was the center of the cosmos. This belief, inherited from ancient Greek philosophy and refined by the Church, was deeply embedded in European thinking. In 1543, Nicolaus Copernicus, a Polish mathematician and astronomer, published De Revolutionibus Orbium Coelestium on the revolutions of the celestial spheres, presenting a heliocentric theory in which the Earth and other planets orbited the Sun. Though controversial at the time, Copernicus's theory provided a new lens through which to view the universe, marking a significant departure from centuries of tradition. Copernicus's ideas were further developed by his successors, most notably Galileo Galilei. Galileo, an Italian physicist and astronomer, made groundbreaking contributions to the study of motion, the development of the telescope, and the observation of celestial bodies. In 1609, he perfected a telescope capable of magnifying distant objects, allowing him to observe the moon's craters, the moons of Jupiter, and the phases of Venus. His findings supported Copernicus's heliocentric theory and directly contradicted the long-held belief that the Earth was the center of the universe. Galileo's public advocacy for the heliocentric model led to conflict with the Catholic Church, culminating in his trial and house arrest. Despite this, his work paved the way for future scientific inquiry. Meanwhile, Johannes Kepler, a German mathematician and astronomer, refined the Copernican model by introducing the laws of planetary motion. Kepler's meticulous observations and mathematical calculations revealed that planets move in elliptical, not circular orbits, a discovery that would later influence Isaac Newton's work on gravity. Kepler's laws provided a more accurate framework for understanding the movement of celestial bodies and solidified the heliocentric model as a cornerstone of modern astronomy. The crowning achievement of the scientific revolution came with the work of Isaac Newton. In 1687, Newton published Philosophiae Naturalis Principia Mathematica, Mathematical Principles of Natural Philosophy, a monumental work that unified the concepts of motion and gravity. Newton's law of universal gravitation explained how objects are attracted to one another based on their mass and the distance between them. His three laws of motion laid the foundation for classical mechanics, influencing not only physics, but also engineering and astronomy for centuries to come. The scientific revolution transformed the way humans understood the natural world, fostering a new era of intellectual exploration and scientific discovery. It encouraged the development of the scientific method, emphasizing observation, experimentation, and the testing of hypotheses. The ideas and methods pioneered during this time laid the groundwork for the Enlightenment, the Industrial Revolution, and modern science, forever altering the trajectory of human knowledge. The Enlightenment, a philosophical movement that emerged in the 17th and 18th centuries, was a period of intellectual ferment that reshaped ideas about government, religion, and society. It championed reason, individual liberty, and the importance of knowledge, challenging traditional authority and old belief systems. The Enlightenment thinkers, known as philosophes, promoted values that encouraged progress, skepticism of absolute power, and a more democratic vision of society. Their writings laid the groundwork for modern political thought and fueled revolutionary movements across the world. Central to Enlightenment thought was the emphasis on reason as the primary tool for understanding and improving the human condition. Thinkers like John Locke, who wrote 2 treatises of government in 1689, argued that government should be based on the consent of the governed and that individuals had natural rights to life, liberty, and property. Locke's ideas, particularly his belief in the right of the people to overthrow oppressive governments, were instrumental in shaping democratic principles and had a profound influence on the American and French revolutions. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, another key Enlightenment thinker, expanded on Locke's theories but introduced his own concept of the social contract. In his work, The Social Contract, published in 1762, Rousseau argued that individuals should collectively agree to form a society where they would be governed by the general will rather than by individual interests. His belief in direct democracy and the importance of civic virtue resonated deeply with the ideals of liberty and equality, influencing both revolutionary and democratic movements that followed. Voltaire, one of the most prominent philosophers of the Enlightenment, used satire and wit to critique religious intolerance, the abuses of the French monarchy, and the power of the Catholic Church. In works such as Candide and Letters on England, Voltaire promoted religious tolerance, freedom of speech, and separation of church and state. His advocacy for civil liberties and his criticism of authoritarian regimes made him an influential figure in shaping public opinion and challenging entrenched systems of power. Enlightenment thinkers believed that human progress could be achieved through education, scientific inquiry, and the application of reason. The period also witnessed significant advancements in science, technology, and mathematics, with figures like Isaac Newton and Galileo Galilei offering new understandings of the natural world. These scientific developments further validated the Enlightenment's faith in human reason and provided a foundation for later political and social reforms. The Enlightenment did not only influence political and philosophical thought, it also had a lasting impact on culture and society. Its ideals contributed to the development of modern education systems, the growth of libraries and intellectual societies, and the proliferation of newspapers and pamphlets that spread revolutionary ideas. The Enlightenment's challenge to old religious, social, and political hierarchies paved the way for the changes that would come in the following centuries, from the American and French revolutions to the rise of modern liberal democracies. The movement's legacy remains evident in today's world, where the principles of individual freedom, equality, and reason continue to influence debates on governance, civil rights, and the role of religion in public life. Through their revolutionary ideas, Enlightenment thinkers changed the course of history, helping to shape the modern world as we know it. The Industrial Revolution, which began in the late 18th century, was a period of profound technological, economic, and social transformation that reshaped the world. It marked the shift from agrarian economies, where production was mostly manual and localized, to industrialized economies that relied on mechanization, mass production, and factory labor. The revolution began in Britain, but quickly spread across Europe and America, forever changing how people lived, worked, and interacted with the world. At the heart of the Industrial Revolution were a series of groundbreaking technological advancements. One of the most notable was the invention of the steam engine. James Watt's improvements to the steam engine in the 1760s made it far more efficient and usable in a variety of industries. The steam engine powered factories, mines, and eventually transportation, driving the expansion of industry. This period also saw the rise of mechanized textile production. Machines such as the spinning jenny and the power loom revolutionized the textile industry, significantly increasing production capacity while reducing the need for manual labor. These innovations enabled industries to produce goods on an unprecedented scale, helping to drive the growth of new markets. In addition to technological innovations, the Industrial Revolution led to significant changes in the way people worked. The factory system, which replaced the traditional system of artisans working at home or in small workshops, created new social dynamics. People, particularly women and children, moved to urban areas to work in factories under often harsh and dangerous conditions. The factory system brought about a shift from agrarian labor to industrial labor, with workers now tied to rigid schedules dictated by the factory's machinery. Although this system contributed to economic growth, it also led to exploitation and poor working conditions for many. Workers were subjected to long hours, low wages, and unsafe working environments, sparking early labour movements and calls for reform. Economically, the Industrial Revolution spurred the growth of new industries and the expansion of existing ones. The rise of factory production created vast wealth for industrialists and entrepreneurs. Though this wealth was not always evenly distributed, the expansion of industries such as coal, iron, and textiles contributed to the rise of a capitalist economy, where businesses sought to maximize profit through the efficient use of labor and resources. This period also witnessed the growth of new transportation networks, including canals, railroads, and steamships, which made the movement of goods faster and more efficient, further integrating markets across regions and continents. The social impact of the Industrial Revolution was equally significant. Urbanization accelerated as people flocked to cities in search of work, leading to the rapid growth of industrial centres. Cities like Manchester, Liverpool, and Chicago grew into bustling metropolises, though they also became overcrowded and unsanitary, creating new public health challenges. This urbanisation, combined with the growing disparity between the wealthy industrialists and the working poor, led to social unrest and the emergence of new political ideologies, including socialism and labour rights movements. The Industrial Revolution transformed economies, societies, and daily life in ways that were previously unimaginable. While it led to vast economic growth and technological progress, it also created social inequalities and environmental degradation. The legacies of this transformative period continue to shape the modern world, with its innovations and challenges still felt today in industrial economies, urban centres, and ongoing struggles for workers' rights. The rise of modern democracies marked a profound shift in the political landscape of the world as people began to question traditional systems of absolute monarchy and the divine right of kings. The 18th and 19th centuries witnessed the birth of democratic ideals that would reshape nations and influence generations to come, fueled by Enlightenment ideas of liberty, equality, and the rights of individuals. Revolutions across the globe laid the foundation for modern democratic systems. The American Revolution of 1776 was one of the most significant events in the rise of modern democracies. The colonies' fight for independence from Britain was not just a struggle for political autonomy, but a statement against the authoritarian rule of the monarchy. The success of the American Revolution was a beacon for democratic aspirations worldwide. The creation of the U.S. Constitution established a framework for government based on the separation of powers, a system of checks and balances, and, most importantly, the protection of individual rights through the Bill of Rights. This model provided a new vision of governance that prioritized the will of the people and the idea of a government accountable to its citizens. In France, the revolution that began in 1789 dramatically transformed the political order. The French Revolution, driven by widespread discontent with the monarchy, social inequality, and economic hardship, culminated in the overthrow of King Louis XVI and the establishment of the First French Republic. The revolution was guided by ideals of liberty, fraternity, and equality, though it led to periods of violence and political instability, including the Reign of Terror. It profoundly influenced the development of democratic principles, particularly in Europe. The French Revolution challenged the existing political order across the continent and inspired numerous other uprisings. In Latin America, the spread of democratic ideals came later, but it was equally transformative. The revolutions in the early 19th century, inspired by the success of the American and French revolutions, led to the independence of many Latin American nations from Spanish and Portuguese rule. Figures like Simón Bolívar in South America and Miguel Hidalgo in Mexico became symbols of resistance and the fight for freedom. These revolutions sought to establish republics that would give power to the people. Although many Latin American nations struggled with issues such as political instability, social inequality, and the concentration of power in the hands of elites, the rise of modern democracies also faced resistance, particularly from monarchies and colonial powers. The backlash was evident in the suppression of uprisings and the reinforcement of authoritarian regimes. But the spread of democratic ideals was unstoppable. Over time, more nations adopted democratic constitutions and systems of government. The expansion of suffrage, the rise of political parties, and the establishment of civil rights for marginalized groups further shaped the evolution of democratic governance. The spread of democratic ideals was not a linear process. It was marked by struggles, conflicts, and setbacks. However, the core values of democracy, participation, equality, and freedom have left an indelible mark on the political systems of the modern world. Today, the principles that emerged from these revolutions continue to guide the functioning of governments and the aspirations of people across the globe. The 2 world wars in the 20th century were among the most significant events in shaping modern civilization. Their impact reverberated across the globe, altering political, social, and economic landscapes in ways that continue to influence the world today. These wars not only led to the loss of millions of lives, but also radically transformed the global order and ushered in a new era of international cooperation, the likes of which had never been seen before. World War I, with its unprecedented scale of destruction, marked the collapse of several empires, including the Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, Russian, and German empires. The Treaty of Versailles, which officially ended the war in 1919, redrew national borders and created new countries, many of which were under the influence of Western powers. The war also introduced new technologies and warfare tactics, from tanks and chemical weapons to the widespread use of aircraft in battle, changing the nature of military conflict forever. The aftermath of World War I laid the groundwork for political instability, economic crises, and the rise of extremist ideologies. The Treaty of Versailles, while aimed at securing lasting peace, left many nations disillusioned and economically weakened, particularly Germany. This created fertile ground for the rise of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party, setting the stage for World War II. World War II, even more devastating than its predecessor, reshaped the global order and marked the beginning of the Cold War. The scale of destruction during World War II was staggering, with tens of millions of people killed and entire cities reduced to rubble. The war directly led to the fall of the Axis powers, Germany, Italy, and Japan, and the subsequent emergence of the United States and the Soviet Union as the world's 2 dominant superpowers. The post-war world was divided into 2 competing spheres of influence, marked by ideological, political, and military rivalry between the capitalist West, led by the United States, and the communist East, led by the Soviet Union. The devastation of the wars also prompted a massive rethinking of how the world should function. The need for cooperation and peace led to the establishment of the United Nations. In 1945, an international organization created to promote dialogue, prevent conflicts, and uphold human rights. The UN was founded on the principle that global cooperation was the key to avoiding future wars and maintaining international stability. Over time, it has become a central force in diplomacy, providing a forum for countries to discuss global issues and work toward common solutions. Moreover, the wars accelerated technological and scientific advancements, particularly in fields like medicine, engineering, and atomic energy. The atomic bomb, which was used to bring an end to World War II, marked the dawn of the nuclear age, raising ethical concerns and prompting efforts toward arms control and non-proliferation in the following decades. The war also led to the creation of NATO and the Warsaw Pact, which defined the military alliances during the Cold War. The world wars brought immense suffering, yet they also set the stage for new political ideologies, international institutions, and technologies that would shape the second half of the 20th century and beyond. The creation of the UN, the rise of new superpowers, and the ongoing quest for global peace remain as enduring legacies of the catastrophic wars that changed the course of history. As we look toward the future of human civilization, we are confronted with a world that is rapidly changing in ways both predictable and unforeseen. The pace of technological advancements, the interconnectedness brought on by globalization, and the shifting balance of power are all contributing to a future that holds both incredible potential and daunting challenges. The trajectory of humanity in the coming decades will be shaped by our ability to adapt, innovate, and navigate the complexities of a global society that is more interconnected than ever before. One of the most profound forces driving the future is technology. We are on the brink of a new technological revolution, one that promises to revolutionize every aspect of our lives. From artificial intelligence and robotics to advancements in biotechnology and space exploration, technology will continue to redefine what it means to be human. The rise of AI, for example, is expected to have far-reaching consequences for jobs, education, and even our concept of self. As machines become more intelligent, we may find ourselves facing ethical dilemmas that challenge the boundaries of autonomy, privacy, and human identity. Similarly, the advancements in biotechnology and genetic engineering hold the potential to extend human life, eradicate diseases, and enhance human capabilities in ways that were once the stuff of science fiction. Yet, these advances also raise important ethical and moral questions about the nature of life itself and the potential consequences of manipulating the human genome. The future of medicine may offer cures for ailments that have plagued humanity for centuries, but it will also force us to confront new dilemmas about the limits of human intervention in natural processes. Globalization, meanwhile, is both a force for unity and division. While the world has never been more connected, it has also never been more divided. Economic, social, and political inequalities persist, with large segments of the population still excluded from the benefits of global progress. As nations continue to grapple with issues such as climate change, migration, and the redistribution of wealth, the future of global governance will be a critical factor in determining whether we can create a more equitable and sustainable world. The institutions that have governed international relations for decades may need to evolve or be replaced entirely in order to address the pressing challenges of the future. Furthermore, the potential for new civilizations on Earth and beyond cannot be ignored. The exploration of space, particularly the possibility of colonizing other planets, could mark the next great chapter in human history. While the prospect of establishing new civilizations on Mars or other celestial bodies is still in the realm of speculation, the technological and logistical hurdles are being tackled with increasing seriousness. Humanity's future may not only be confined to Earth, but could also involve the spread of human civilization across the cosmos, changing our perspective on life and our place in the universe. The future of human civilization is not predetermined. It will be shaped by the choices we make today, the values we hold, and the innovations we foster. As we confront global challenges and embrace new technologies, we must remain mindful of our shared humanity and the lessons of history. How we navigate the complexities of a rapidly changing world will determine the legacy we leave for future generations.